Welcome everybody on this beautiful spring day. So first up is the call to order and approval of tonight's agenda. Moved by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Fithers. The discussion, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next up on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the March 28th meeting. Moved by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Perkins and Mr. Denisha. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. First up is highway with Mr. Don Chambers. The first resolution is approving New York State Department of Transportation supplemental agreement number 1 for preliminary design of the Lazy River Road Bridge for Grass River. PIN number 3341820 and PIN number 775332. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Perkins and Mr. Sheridan. Mr. Chambers.
Thank you. Good evening. Good to be back in here to see everybody. Just wanted to put that out there. The resolution regarding the supplemental agreement with New York State for preliminary engineering, as it's stated in the past few months, you're likely to see more contracts come forward with the state of New York as we progress our federal aid projects, because they've broken each topic in the design and construction down into different phases. So we need to do different contracts for that. This project in the end for construction will be funded through the Bridge New York program, which is a 95% federal, 5% county, whereas this portion is 80% federal funded. For the design portion is 80% federal funded, 15% state funded, and 5% county. The county percentage doesn't change, but the state and federal does throughout, because this was converted to a Bridge New York project for construction.
Any questions for Mr. Chambers concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. For next resolution, is authorizing the chair to sign an agreement between the Department of Highways and the Black Lake Chamber of Commerce, Inc. for information center to be built and maintained on the county material storage site in the town of Morristown. Moved by Mr. Lightfoot, seconded by Mr. Stennis.
Yes, the Chamber of Commerce over at the Black Lake brought forward a proposition to put a building information building on a parcel of land that is owned by St. Lawrence County. Has been used over the years for the Department of Highways for stockpiling materials or what have you. And I believe at one time, many years ago, was quarry for rock for road construction in the area. So, but it is a old quarry area that it has a level spot right up next to County Road 6 at the intersection of State Route 58 in Edwardsville. And we do have Mr. Dashnow, who's representing the chamber.
Yeah.
Here for him as well.
That's enough. That was the project.
Thank you.
Good evening. I should say it's nice to be back, only if it's temporary. Black Lake Chamber. Black Lake, as you know, is one of the largest tourism water bodies that draws tourists into St. Lawrence County. And I just want to, I think most of you probably have seen the stats on this developed by PPC. And it has to do with a number of lakes, but Black Lake in St. Lawrence County, it's an economic impact. Anglers who fish that water body. Black Lake and the output, and there's a whole number of stats here, but the output potential there was, at the time that they did that survey, was 16,116,631. And the interesting thing here, county residents, revenues generated, tax revenues generated, county residents, it was 281,307. Non-county New York State residents, 1.8 million plus and out-of-state anglers, 1.4 million plus. Most of the people that come to Black Lake to stay in the campgrounds out there, there's approximately 24 to 25 commercial campgrounds, are from out of state. They're at least 2.5 hours away, because other than that, why you can bring your boat in at state launch, drop in the water, go fishing for the day, and then leave. But when you get, we found that when you get about 2.5 hours away, most of them want to stay in cabins. They're staying for the week, sometimes 3-day weekends. So one of the things that we talked about, this actually started 2.5 years ago. We were going to build it 2 years ago, and at the request of a lot of people, mostly tourists that come to the area, wanted to know where other things are, other tourist activities in the area. And we really didn't have a good information center. We did have a small one at a commercial campground, but it was not maintained well. And then, of course, they shut that down. And it was only like a 4x4 piece of plywood. So this started back then. Well, we ran into some issues with COVID, so it got put on the shelf for 2 years. And this year we'd like to get the thing built. It's approximately 60 by 14 storage in the back side, the information center at the front side. It's a little bit west of the Edwardsville intersection. It's in a 35-mile speed zone there. The shoulder is really flat there, lots of room. Don can speak more to that. And what we thought we would do based on Don's approval is place the building so it's the information center is from the fence forward, the storage area is back. So we cut a hole in the fence and fence around the building. And it would be set back enough so that we have plenty of room for vehicles to pull off there to be able to get the information they need and then move on. All kinds of parking there, as far as width goes. So it looked like a really nice place to put it there, and it wouldn't have any impact as far as unlocking gates or locking gates or anything like that. If there are questions, St. Lawrence County actually is a member of our chamber, of course, and we would take all the materials that they could provide as far as information about other tourist activities.
Any questions for Mr. Dash? Mr. Smithers?
Yeah, could you just give me the dimensions again of the building?
The what?
Dimensions.
Oh,
The building?
it's approximately 16 by 14. You know, and I've said that the storage area is 8 feet, you know, just preliminary drawings. And they are very preliminary, but the storage area is 8 feet and 6 feet for the information center. That may change a little bit whether we don't really need that much storage and we have a lot more information to put in there. But it's 60 feet long. Right now, we're intended to leave it open right now in the front. I'm not sure how that's going to receive the weather. As I think they're drawing in the.
Yes, there is.
Drawing in there. Yeah, so it's the roof cantilevers over the information center, but I'm not sure whether or not it's going to be left open or if it's going to be enclosed and then provide some lighting. The other reason we kind of like that location is near power pole in case we need some electricity for lighting.
Any other questions for Mr. Dash? Mr. Reagan?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair. I just want to commend the Black Lake Chamber of Commerce for bringing this forward. Black Lake is a major tourist draw in St. Lawrence County, and as Mr. Dashon pointed out, it brings people from all over the state and people from the surrounding states to St. Lawrence County, and I think it's wonderful that they, the business people on Black Lake, are taking the initiative to find a way to help encourage families while they're here to visit some of the other wonderful places that we have here in St. Lawrence County. So thank you very much for doing this. and I hope my colleagues will support this.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Dashna. Thank you. So next up is the discussion. We have Mr. Chambers with the 2022 Highway Infrastructure Plan.
Okay. All right, okay, thank you. Yes, what I brought forward tonight is try to be very brief, update on our infrastructure plan going forward. On the front page, you'll see we have a structure showing the new Browns Bridge on the upper left and the Jones Road project on the bottom right. That were two structures that we just completed and very proud of the progress that was done on those two. Use those as our opening statement. Next, please. The highway infrastructure, as I think you folks know, we have our bridges, culverts, large and small equipment, highway buildings, at multiple locations. So we've had a lot of infrastructure and items to maintain. Next, please. Our current bridge status, we have 190 bridge structures that are open, 12 closed. And we have approximately 55 bridges that are in deficient condition and will need to be addressed over the next 10 years. Some indications on the bottom of different types of bridge. The photograph on the left depicts basically the underside of a open steel grade bridge, showing deterioration of the secondary sleepers, basically as we call them, that ride over the main rivers, and that deterioration that's caused by having these open decks. Our methodology going forward will be to eliminate open steel grade decks and go into solid surface structures that are much more durable and long lasting. So making a good investment that is going to serve the county long term. The other, which may not be quite as evident, is actually showing an old failure that was in the town of Brazier. That's actually a couple of multiple pipes where the corrosion on the bottom of the structure gave way and ended up having a road failure and actually a closure in the town of Brazier for quite some time. But just using that as an example, we can have different, even though they're labeled by a bridge, the bridges indicate a span length of over 20 feet, not necessarily a construction type. So sometimes there's some confusion on that. Next, please. In our typical bridge operations, we normally have 1 to 2 bridges that are being constructed with federal and state funds. We had a very good last few years with state and federal funds doing multiple bridges per year. However, 2022, we just have projects that are either completing design or in the beginning design with such as Lazy River and County Road 35. In the state budget, there was an additional, just announced an additional $100 million statewide for Bridge New York program, and we did apply for that County Road 35 project. So that still could come to fruition if we are successful in this next phase with the new state budget that has just came out. So. As far as the in-house, usually we're constructing on a typical year about 3 bridges with our county forces and doing maintenance on our with local funds. So the bridges that we do in-house with our crews are funded by CHIPS program, which is state funds. Next, please. Notable resolutions, basically want to highlight that in 1977, there was a resolution that basically transferred a lot of bridges that were over 25 feet in length on town roads to the county. And in 2019, we established a criteria of selecting the priority for replacement of structures. So that is used as a guideline whenever bringing forward projects to be done with the state and local funds. Next, please. Next page, basically, as you can see, highlights some projects that we've done in recent years. Really kind of self-explanatory, but a lot of really good work that I'm very proud of. The efforts of our department, contractors that also work. Some are contractor effort. Some of these are in-house projects, and like I said, some state and federal, and some are primarily state. Next, please. One of the projects that is, I think, very clear to everybody that's happening in the area is the Smart Path project. We did have some very strong reservations of how the impacts of all that road construction or all that line construction would have on our roadways. But I can tell you that NIPA and contractor Michaels has been very accommodating. We are going to sustain some damages on some of our roads, and we are seeing that right now. But the NIPA has been very respectful with their entrances to our roadways, hardening those so it's not tearing up the shoulder of the road, and working with the road. So for the great economic impact that's having on the area, they did work very hard with the department to reduce impacts to our roads as much as possible. Next, please. Problem solution. I think it's abundantly clear. Increased cost, especially over the last couple of years. I think I don't have to explain that or say that energy is probably one of the biggest increases in energy in our sector is for highway is very intense, from steel to cement, asphalt, diesel fuel for trucks, impacts everything in our operations. Basically, it's petroleum derived. So in one way or another. So one way that we may need to look at is that working or utilizing maybe fund balance becomes available. Prices continue to rise, and we still need to do the same amount of road work or more. We may need to look at using fund balance through the situation. Another issue is trying with increased cost is now also the contracting requirement. The current level we can go up to is $350,000 before we can bid that out. The county association and the town associations have been looking at trying to get that approval up to the $750,000 level, so that we can utilize in-house forces to save some money on some projects, but then some of the larger, more complex projects that certainly we still need to continue to bid those out. And all of the federal aid projects are required by statute to be bid out anyway. So this would be basically looking at the local, the CHIPS funds to raise that bidding. We have over the decades, we have had a reduction in staffing and one of the solutions we do and have continued, and I think are very successful, is working with the towns, the other municipalities and contractors to supplement our workforce to get projects. So I think that's been a very successful partnership between contractor, county operations, and also with our town partners. Next, please. An issue that I brought up a couple of years ago, and with COVID, actually, one good thing with COVID, it's kind of slowed down the implementation of the UPT 21 permitting. New York State has not yet adopted this nationwide permitting system. But when that goes into effect, that is going to have an impact on our structures. Next, please. And what that will do is basically take our right now 34 bridges that we have restricted for by weight restrictions will increase another 18 bridges on that list that are have restrictions on it. And that does create a problem because the almost every truck that goes down the road now is running with an overload permit in order to move more product with the same, same energy or approximately the same energy and the same labor. Increased loads has been the industry's answer to moving products more efficiently. However, a lot of our infrastructure, some of our bridges are, back in the 20s and 30s. These loads were never even thought of going across these structures. So that will impact us and could possibly impact, your industries and agriculture in the area that are restricted from using our bridges to get to their area. Next. And so going there, the next page lists these currently restricted structures and the additional ones that will be affected with the UP 21. So a lot of these are on town roads, but we do have county roads that are impacted. Next, please. Future bridge goals with the 55 bridges that need to be have capital expenditures in the next 10 years. Looking to try to increase the frequency of rehab or replacement to 4 or 5. The past few years, we have exceeded that goal, and this year we will probably fall short of that. But we have been well exceeding that goal in the last couple of years. So, unfortunately, with that little wall, I think with Bridge New York and hopefully with things coming forward with our federal transportation plan, that will that number will turn around. And so, but right now the proposal is to use about 1.78 million chips, and then if need be, use maybe $1 million for fund balance to bridge those years we don't have as much construction. That would probably need a couple of years look ahead in order to get our permitting in place, but at this point, I'm pretty confident with what we have proposed this year to be all right with that. Something that if this trend continues and we do not get the federal funding, that may be an area that we need to explore. Next, please. Problem with our roadways, I think we do have issues with our system. A lot of our issues with our roads are sub-base efficiencies. With the heavy loads comes additional rutting and stress on the structures. So that's an issue that we have. We have been trying to, by doing cold in place recycling, we have tried to add additional strength by recycling the existing material, adding additional stone to provide more strength, and then overlay that instead of a single overlay project, trying to gain strength as we go and dealing with the areas that if we do have a problem over and above that, go back in with a corrective action. But that's in a very minor areas. on the grand scheme of the number of miles that we do. There are some roads that have major issues. The picture that we have here is an area that we needed to build the road up over in on County Road 3 in Rossi, where the roads used to flood over repeatedly. 2014, one of my first projects that we had here is we actually addressed that, raising the road 3 to 4 feet and building that up with bank ground gravel and then fabric and paving that area. So it's that was something that definitely addressed the structural capacities, the flooding issues, and getting emergency services to the areas. Next. At this point, our treatment options that we're using, the rough filling, we have a new mini paver that we've been employing to basically fill those ruts where we have depressions, buying time until we can get there on the road to do a major project. That's very effective rather than trying to fill potholes with cold patch or oil patch. We're taking care of the deficiency, and that helps to keep the water and frost from penetrating into the roadways and causing additional damages. So it's not the prettiest, but it's actually very functional. Chip sealing is an oil and stone. We do that for around 15 miles of road a year just to buy time on some pavements that need to be sealed on. So much like a driveway sealer, stone adds the friction course so that it's not slippery. The cold in place, hot top, that's our primary method that we've been using. So the cold in place recycling, adding stone and oil, and then putting hot asphalt. Then the next is full depth reclamation with hot asphalt topping. On County Road 8, we did a full depth reclamation where we used the existing sub-base materials and added gravel and then paved. So we had major deficiencies on that roadway, and that was dealt with in that manner. And then complete roadway reconstruction, as I indicated on the previous page with County Road 3. Next, please. This next page just basically lays out, where what funds we're investing, and this is making the assumption that next month, when I bring forward a resolution to move the additional CHIPS funds around, that we put them in the areas that I propose. This will give us approximately 35 miles plus or minus of paving for this year. That's the CHIPS funded, and then it will be probably around 31 miles of road filling. And in the areas where we're paving, before we pave, we replace the small culverts that are needed of replacement. And that's usually around 85 a year, and that's also funded by CHIPS. Next, please. County road culvert inventory. We have around 269 large culverts, and again, depicted at the bottom, they can be tight or even look like a bridge, like the center structure looks much like a bridge, but it's actually a culvert, where we have some bridges that look like culverts. So I just wanted to illustrate that sometimes it can be they can be a little bit confusing. But we're doing several large culverts this year, and then as they're in these projects, we're doing about 85 small culverts. And in the total inventory, we have over 2,000. Next, please. Much like the bridge, we do a priority on the large culverts, and we do the small culverts basically during the paving operations, and also dealing with ones that are in the failure mode or that are off the paving. We also do those, but that's basically our culvert projects. Next, please. Well, our goals for the department is to continue our annual program county road system. Funding the bridges to about 1.78 million. And if need be, when we have the shortfalls that we may have in the coming years, use maybe $1 million from fund balance to help fund bridges. As far as county equipment, next, I'm sorry, we have 123 large pieces of equipment, 165 small pieces of equipment. And in 2021, we purchased about $2.7 million worth of equipment. I'm working on the next phase of the plan for equipment, which is the 5-year out in 2026 to do a 5-year update on some of the other equipment. About the time some of our bond retires from the first issues for equipment.
That's in the next slide.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
Our light fleet is currently, we have a leasing program that has been very successful in providing modern, safe, and efficient vehicles. And as I said, our next update will be in 2026 for the heavy fleet. Highway facilities, we have our maintenance shop, Park Street office and buildings, carpenter shop, salt bin buildings, sign shop, 2 buildings, fuel storage. We have our county landfill buildings at the old Canton, Ogdensburg, Messina landfills. We have our new Russell outpost that was just constructed. We're starting the construction on Potsdam outpost, which will be moving away from the town of Potsdam, and then we have a salt building in Madrid, and we have our county sand pit. Next, please. I thought it would be appropriate to give an update on our county facilities, highlighting our brand new outpost facility in Russell. Have 2 pictures here of the inside of the facility with the snowplows inside, and an outside photograph showing the salt storage and the truck storage that you see inside. Very proud, very thankful for the support and moving us forward. Thank you. Next, please. The next page, it shows the Lisbon facility that is being built. Basically, mirror image of the one in Russell. This was a few weeks ago. The picture on the left is the new sand salt storage building. We did have an issue where that facility, when it was initially being put up, was blown down by heavy winds. Unfortunately, the trusses and all the timber had to be reordered, which was already a logistical issue. But that was covered by the contractor's insurance, and so it did put us back months in schedule, unfortunately. The garage is nearly complete at this point, and so is the sand and salt at this point. Moving right ahead. And as I said, in the Potsdam facility, we are the driveway culvert has been installed, and we will be working on the access roadway next week, and we'll have site work prepared for the contractor to start June 1 on construction. Next, please. As far as highlighting a few projects, I mean, there's nothing bigger than the new outpost that we're making, and a lot of the others have been maintenance to keep things going. But again, I think thank you for the support that you've given me to bring this department along. Make sure things. Thank you. Next, please. In conclusion, for roadways, Currently, we're using about $6 million of chips, about 410,000 of local funds. And that's primarily for surface treating, gravel for shoulders, driveway culverts, strip paving. So that's basically what the local funds are used for. Whereas the CHIPS funds are used as a capital project because you have to spend CHIPS money on something that has over a 10-year service life. And the additional, the rest of 1.79 is supposed to be is used basically from bridges and a large culverts. And as I said earlier, if we need to get into additional projects, I would recommend that we fund that with fund balance if possible. I think we have a very good program going forward, and a step with the funding for equipment, if we choose to bond or pay for them, again, like we have with cash this past time, certainly the privilege of the board or whatever, how we proceed, but the programs are laid out there so that we will retire in debt service, and hopefully we can move forward with the purchase of additional equipment or replacement equipment in 6. And maintaining our county facilities as needed as we have been, and finish the construction through the outpost. I'm sorry to take so much time, but there's a lot to cover at the county highway. So hope I was brief and
Mr. Smithers has a comment or question.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to your comments about weight restrictions. That seems to be a serious issue on our county roads and bridges. How much input do we have or control over the weight restrictions? Are we entirely dependent on the state and federal government for those, or can we impose those?
we have a permitting authority to permit loads, but as far as the restrict, put up a restriction, say, this bridge is posted or whatever. But really that is right now working out more of a federal and state program. State issues the permits, and usually we get sent the state permit and we basically say, okay, you can continue on in your route and use this route for transport. But it really starts at the state and federal level. So in many other states, it's federal. New York State is still controlling it. So it's a complex question, but when it goes to UPT, it will be basically a federal program right from the start. So there'll be the trucker or whatever trucking company, logistics will say it's coming from Dallas, Texas to Canton. They're going to go to one place basically that's controlled by the federal system and file a permit, and that's when you get the truck from Texas to Canton or vice versa. So that's how that would be.
Some of these back roads and the bridges were made for lighter vehicles, and we have these heavy milk trucks and 18-wheelers that are now going over them to deliver, and they just aren't going to hold up.
Right. Well, that is an issue. And that's one reason why we need to continue. That's the way the industry has gone to. One of the things that when they were looking at, instead of the trucking industry, instead of looking at miles per gallon that the trucks get, they want to go in tons per gallon as an equation. So the way to make your truck more efficient is not necessarily making it more miles per gallon. Their easier thing is load her up and give it some more horsepower and torque, and it goes down the road. So that's been kind of the answer to that. And that's also a labor issue when you get into, there's a shortage in the trucking industry that I think has been quite evident as well. So I think it's a big issue that does impact us locally, but there's national implications as well for the industry that need to move cargo. So you can post your local roads, but you also have to allow your local businesses to get their products and services in and out. So it might not be able to be through traffic, but a lot of those local roads, we have farms or whatever that need fuel or fertilizer or contractors or homeowners for that matter that need deliveries. And a lot of times they're going to be on heavy.
Mr. Forsyth.
Thank you. Don, you can applaud yourself. You did a good job. You know, it's the things you've done over the last several years. You should be very proud. The whole department, and really, you've gone to a whole new level, I think. My question, one of the things is solid waste falls under your jurisdiction. I ran into an issue a couple, 3 weeks ago with the Ogdensburg site. The crusher was down. And when you look at the Ogdensburg landfill, that crusher is old, I believe, the compactor.
Oh, you're talking for the recyclable, sir.
No, it's for the construction debris. My son and I tore a commercial building down and we were gonna take Ogdensburg, which was from Ogdensburg to Ogdensburg was close. We ended up having to go to Governor because of the fact that it was out. When you talk heavy equipment, does that fall under this jurisdiction or is that a separate under solid waste?
The machine in Ogdensburg, the crane machine, actually was just replaced in the last few years. We have had some issues, and I'm meeting with the vice president of Billroy Corporation at my office, having a discussion about how we're going to move forward and make sure that has better service.
Okay, because yeah, we ran into that. It was substantially different than what I was planning. Yeah,
So anyway, but
yeah,
that is.
but it does come under
We,
highway or solid waste?
it's under solid waste, but that, we have been upgrading the equipment as solid waste as well. We had to replace the crane in Messina and in Ogdensburg. And my proposal would be to go forward on the ones in Star Lake and in Governor. It's basically to take the parts from the one out of Messina or Ogdensburg, rebuild those machines, and then put them into service, and then take, say, like one out of Governor, rebuild that, and then take that to Star Lake and take that one out of service, but also keeping the parts, the electric motors that are on, their electric equipment.
Yeah.
And those electric motors, we can have those taken out locally and rebuilt. And those electric motors are pretty bulletproof. So
Okay.
we found that the electronics on the brand new machines aren't as reliable as.
Right, surprise. Yeah,
Okay, but that's the issue with that, sir, but I am addressing that. with the
okay,
vice
no
president.
problem.
Mr. Nation.
Hearing. Don, as Dave said, you've done a great job for us. Paving schedule for 2022. When will that be?
Well, that has been given to the highway committee prior to this meeting. And the caveat that I put in there, since we just learned Thursday on the pave our potholes funds, and we will need to do a resolution next month. It was too late in the sequence to get it for this month, but that's why I put it out to the highway committee as a tentative plan, because I need your approval to put the funds in that slot. So, but the highway committee hasn't, scheduled to discuss that further with them, but I haven't seen where anybody on the committee has had an objection at this point to paperless, but we do have that, sir.
Another question, or I guess not so much a question as a comment. You mentioned Michael and Smart Growth and Michael's. You know, they've a lot of places that they have really torn up roads. One place in particular that I see often is the section between Herman and Russell, where their lay down yard is. That is, it may not be the worst section of road in St. Lawrence County, but it would be in the running. It was
Mr.
bad
Ganesha,
shape
if
to
I
begin
may,
with.
that is one that actually should have been on the list for the 2022, but since Michael's is going to continue to tear that road, put a large equipment, I proposed to put that off until they move their heavy equipment out of there, so they don't destroy it while we're trying to repave it.
Yes, sir.
I thought when we had a meeting with NIPA and Michael's, one of the things that they had asked is that any towns would keep a record of the condition of the roads that they have. And, you know, whether it was photographs or written, but to keep track of any damage that was caused as a result of the project. And that Michaels or NIPA would repair it.
That's one thing, yes, sir, that's one thing we have to address, County Road 23 is another, that would happen, probably 24 in Edwards, that area, Edwards, Russell area, there's some issues, but on the whole, it's been pretty decent, you know, from.
You know, I guess my point is, if they're the ones that trashed it, we shouldn't have to pay to fix it.
Understood. We probably should have that discussion for those roads.
Mr. Burke.
Two questions, Don. One, on preventive maintenance. Does the state or federal government incentivize? Or is it, do we have to wait 10 years of funding?
That is indeed the fact. Any of the maintenance that really needs to be out of local funds. And the chips, I need to wait until we've got a 10-year service life. So that's why it's imperative that we try to do the best repair that we can so that we're giving the longer service life. We have limited local funds to put in it, so we'll try to do the best we can with the resources that we have. Give you the longest serving project without breaking the bank too. But it's basically local funds only for maintenance.
The second question has to do with it's been about 30 since the date that it made down. Are there any plans to repay that?
Well, this year, a lot of the money that I have in my capital expenditures for the transfer station is actually rebuilding the wall for the recycling compactor in Messina. So county forces, the bridge crew have been working on that. The retaining wall between that and the compactor has started to fail. And so we're doing a capital project there. So understand the paving, don't disagree with you, but I had to deal with a structural component first. But you're absolutely right. The paving does need to be addressed at the transfer stations, and I'll try to make those that a priority. But the structural item, unfortunately, had to take front seat on that.
Thank you.
Good.
Mr. Smithers.
The concern that you raised 3 or 4 weeks ago regarding the possible PAVAR potholes funding from the state, I think I saw someplace that's been resolved. Could you verify that that's not endangered any longer?
That is correct. I was concerned, the lobbyist for, not, that's where I got my information, is for the lobbyist for the County Highway Superintendents Association. Indicated to us, and I'm on the executive committee for the County Highway Superintendents Association, and in the meeting, the lobbyist indicated that was a reality, that may happen, that the funds would all be funneled downstate. That was not successful, and the funds have been shared in an equitable manner across the state. Basically, they're using the same distribution formula that they did for the extreme winter recovery, which means approximately another $800,000 to St. Lawrence County, plus additional funds to about 20% increase, I think, to 10 to 20% increase for all town colleagues in the county as well. So I appreciate what the legislature did by reacting to the information that I put out. And so, again, thank you for your efforts to help bring the funds to this county.
Anyone else? Mr. Bailey.
With all our culverts and we're increasing the weight limits of trucks, we're gonna be replacing a lot more culverts.
Well, the majority of the culverts, when we're doing the paving around Mr. Fay are being replaced at that point. And we are putting sufficient cover. Basically, most of them are of the pipe. So by the time if you put sufficient cover on them, this weight will not be such an issue. And a lot of it is also multiple axles. Usually when you're in tire pressure, you're not getting a lot more tire pressure because it's usually only one axle at a time over a small culvert. Over a bridge or a large culvert, you may get a good share of the load on a large culvert. You may get the entire load on a bridge. So that impacts more on bridge issues, our larger bridges, not necessarily our 25, 30 footers, tractor trailer, 75 feet long. Part of it's going to be out the bridge before the load is in part of it. We have many large bridges that will definitely impact.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rick?
Don, earlier you said that we have 55 bridges that are deficient. And you said that we're doing about 4 or 5 bridge projects a year.
Yes.
So, at the current rate we're going, that's, it'll be 15 years, and we may have gotten the end of that list. Is that
Well, you're likely not going to get to the end of the list because
Well, I
we're
know
going to have other.
I know there's new bridges that are coming onto the list as each year progresses, but I was just wondering whether or not overall, we are appropriating enough money to keep up with the deficiencies that we have in our system.
Well, at the last few years where we were doing like 11 bridges, we made up some time, okay? So to say that you didn't fund it appropriately or whatever would be a misstatement on my part. But my point was, if we end up having multiple years where we're dropping down, where we don't have any federal aid projects and construction, that may be a problem where we need to supplement that. So I think at this point, we do have deficient bridges, but we aren't in a catastrophic situation. I think if we need to keep an eye on that. If we start having, like I said, if we start dropping down, we're only doing about 4 a year and more are being added to the list, I think we're going to get into some trouble. We've also got some, the open steel grade bridges, they deteriorate very fast. So what could happen is those 55 bridges, that might not be a linear issue where we may, might have deterioration, where we may have to do some additionals more quickly. That the salt and chloride is going directly onto the steel members, they deteriorate very quickly. And once they start getting rusty and that salt gets in the open metal, it's not a linear, it's parabolic curve where we're likely to get more.
Have we got any indication of what we might be looking at in terms of the federal infrastructure bill, in terms of what there might be for highway money? Or
At this point, some of the additional is going to that through the state budget is that extra 100 million that just became available in the state budget. But I think, and probably over this next year, hopefully we get more details coming into the new federal fiscal year that starts October 1. I'm thinking in September, we're going to start hearing more information about and getting more details, but the money has to come through the state of New York first, and then the state of New York distributes that federal money. So federal money doesn't come directly to the counties or the towns or the villages. It goes through the New York State Department of Transportation. So that's so.
Anyone else? Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
We will continue to support, especially that. Fund balance now that it's provides help. Especially city funds.
I certainly appreciate this, the board, my employees appreciate the support I need from the administration and the legislatures. Again, thank you all for helping us be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the Industrial Development Agency with Patrick Kelly. The resolution for tonight is approving the issuance by the Genesee County Funding Corporation in one or more series as part of a plan of finance of up to 275 million principal amount of revenue bonds, known as the Rochester Regional Health Project, Series 2022, of which up to 121,700,000 principal amount shall be used to finance the North Country project as defined herein. And this moved by Mr. Burt, second by Mr. Rickon. Mr. Kelly.
I will point out one of the tools that IDAs and IDA affiliated organizations have at their disposal is the ability to issue tax exempt bond financing. And tax exempt bond financing helps the project borrower or the applicant by enabling the bank or the investment house that purchases the bonds to charge a lower interest rate because they don't pay taxes on those interest earnings. So rather than a bank, when it has an automobile loan, for example, and you pay 4%, that 4% earning, they pay federal and typically state income tax on. In the case of tax exempt bond financing, that interest earning isn't taxed, therefore the amount is lower, and then the payments are lower to the applicant, which enables them to do things like expand hospitals, provide better health care, hire people, employ people, grow. I think the last time we had a discussion about the county's role was about a year ago with the Clarkson bond issue. So IRS requirements are that before an IDA or a similar organization can issue tax exempt bond financing, the impacted county or municipality sponsoring the organization has to approve the issue for IRS purposes. It wasn't a misprint that it's the Genesee County Funding Corporation. That's unique. This is a multi-jurisdictional bond offering. So we are participating with the Genesee County Funding Corporation, the Monroe County Industrial Development Corporation, and the Rochester Regional Health System as the ultimate bond applicant to do what is bond proceeds that will be used in the three counties. So each county has to provide this approval that we're seeking from you tonight. As Committee Chair Akers pointed out, there's a portion of this, it's 121 million, which is allocated for projects in St. Lawrence County. Primarily, that's the 4-bed medical surgical tower in Potsdam, which is going to take their emergency room number from 17 to 28. The medical surgical beds will be 60 new modernized single room occupant beds, which I think is a net increase of about 15 from what the facility currently has. And then refinancing the 2010 and 2016 bond issues that the IDA Civic Development Corporation issued. And those were for the Cancer Center over in Potsdam and for the facility in Canton, Potsdam on Route 11. So it's new construction, refinancing. We are, as you can see, the largest portion of the bond. However, the Genesee County Funding Corporation is the lead issuer. They will be the ones ultimately issuing the bonds. We've been working with them in Monroe County for the last 2 months or more on this project. This is a clear indication of that the affiliation Canton Potsdam Hospital, St. Lawrence Health System has with the Rochester Regional Health System, that they're part of this kind of financing, that they're doing this kind of modernization of. So with that, I entertain any questions.
Mr. Brunel?
Thank you. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. It's been a long time since we had these mics. So it's always great to see our healthcare system expanding, especially seeing we're so kind of closed off to other opportunities around here. I just can't help but to ask, and sure you can't share any kind of inner details, but I do wonder as we expand on one campus, if it's going to have a negative impact on the smaller campuses like Messina, Governor, as we improve and finance one, that they're going to be a cost collateral, I guess, to the other facilities.
Yeah, I would put this in the rising tide of the all modes category. I think the investment in the system, the facilities, regionally, is going to result in better services without the same results. They're doing upgrade work in Governor right now. I don't think this is nothing I see in this project is replacing investment that would go in the other communities. And I'm sure that's how, I shouldn't say this, but I believe that's how they would answer that question.
Mr. Smithers.
In regards to the proposal that Clifton Pines Hospital brought here a month or so ago, are you aware of their plans for expansion? And we're considering contributing some money towards that also as part of the ARPA funding. So are you working with them at all?
Yeah,
Their
we are.
plans?
Yep, I was here when they were here actually the last time. They are a borrower. We have an outstanding loan with them for their existing healthcare clinic, and we've been in touch with them. We are a project partner in the USDA application. So we have an ongoing, fairly consistent relationship.
Okay, Mr. Forsythe.
Patrick, usually there's a mention of, you get a small fee from this too, don't you normally?
Yep. Typically, our fee is typically 1% of a project of the bond amount. Working with the other issuers, I believe it's going to be about 0.9%, or whatever that final number is. It's
Roughly.
going to be in the 800,000 range.
Mr. Sager.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I just want to say that myself, and I know a lot of the residents of Potsdam are very happy to have CPH as a neighbor and contributor to our municipality. I live not very far from there, maybe like 2 blocks. And there's quite a controversy when Cottage Street was taken over, but I would just like to say that it has contributed greatly to the economics of Potsdam, and we're very grateful to have the facility there.
And I will connect your comment with Mr. Anelli's. The health system has about 2,000 employees in St. Lawrence County. So evening I was here the last time, I think it was for the county's comprehensive economic development strategy. And after that discussion, we added healthcare and human services as one of the primary or key industries in the SEDS document for St. Lawrence County. So it's clearly by not just the services that are provided, investment, but the heft of the employment numbers. It's very, very important to the economy. And I think this kind of investment is obviously.
Mr. Rickman.
Patrick, how much has the IDA provided to this loan to the Starlight Hospital?
We packaged a total loan of, I believe, 350,000, which 150,000 was directly from us, and the balance was from regional partners, the North Country Alliance and the Development Authority of the North Country.
I asked a question, $150,000 from the IDA. I'm sure everybody perked up when they heard there was that the IDA would get $800,000 from this. I would just point out that the money that went to the Star Lake Hospital came from the IDA from these kinds of projects that provides the IDA with the money that they use to loan out to projects. For example, last couple weeks ago, the IDA met and loaned $195,000, almost $200,000 to Potsdam Paper, which, will help support, was it 70 or 80 jobs
76.
in the Potsdam area. They did put up $50,000 to Cooperative Extension to help them obtain a state grant that'll be paid back to the IDA. They also put up this past year $500,000 to upfront some of the costs of the Newell project in Ogdensburg. My point is that this money doesn't just sit in a pot under Patrick's desk. It goes out to support businesses here in the county. And, we see it at Kern Renewables or in Louisville. We see it at their plant in recently opened operation in Ogdensburg, at the former ACO plant, where they're putting in a sawmill. And, this money is going back into the local economy and helping these companies to either protect existing jobs, which is extremely important, or in some cases, helping them to grow jobs. So, with this Potsdam Hospital, this $120 million project in St. Lawrence County is going to turn over in the economy at least, 4, 5, 6 times. You're going to see a $6 million impact in the county from it. And the money from this percent that is paid to the IDA will end up going back into strengthening our many businesses of all kinds of sizes in the county. And just so you received a copy of the comprehensive report for the year from the IDA a week or so ago. And it pointed out that Structural Wood in Waddington paid off their $300,000 loan. Glass Boss paid off a $78,000 loan. Susan Stitches in Red Cedar Falls paid off a $20,000 loan. Gilbert Greens in outside of Hubleton paid off their $50,000 loan. So, sometimes people say, oh, the IDA is just helping big businesses. It's helping, small companies, firms of all sizes. And now I don't have to do an IDA report later on in the meeting.
Point of order or an RBRDA. Look, all the way down to my sale again.
I'll make a kind of an add-on comment. The hospital systems have multiple opportunities to find financing. There's different things they can do. Canton Potsdam Hospital, the St. Lawrence Health System, who we've had a relationship with for decades, I think was very supportive and interested and helpful in our being part of this financing structure. And I think they have an awareness that some of the funding that is to be earned through a project like this does come back and support the community, support them. So relationships matter. It's helpful when the people that you're dealing with are sort of sharing your view of what's important and what can be helpful from a community perspective. And certainly that's the case with them. And to the fee issue, I wish all project fees were in the hundreds of thousands. Typically, they're in the tens of thousands. Construction projects, unfortunately, they're in the millions. So it's as Don pointed out, nothing's getting cheaper. Everything's more expensive. You know, if a shell building that we built in Potsdam 15 years ago cost us around 800,000 or 900,000. That building today would be well over twice that. And that's just the impact of what things cost right now. And obviously, the more resources you have at your disposal, the more active you can be and the more projects you can be part of. Hopefully that's.
Any other questions for Mr. Kelly?
Can I close just
Sure.
just for reiterating,
Yeah,
these are not obligations, I've always looked up to say this, these are not obligations of the county, of St. Lawrence County, of Genesee County, or the IDA. It's just be aware you're not guaranteeing the bonds in any way. It's not on your financials.
Anyone else? Any further questions? All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. The next resolutions brought forth by Legislator Haggard, Legislator Terminelli from their NICEAG conference. I would ask Mrs. Haggard to present the first one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to defer to our county administrator's office to address these resolutions, as I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions that I may not be able to answer.
Is that fine with you, Mr. Terminelli?
Absolutely. I concur.
You're on the hook. Okay, so the first resolution is requesting the New York State Legislature to establish solar panel recycling regulations. Moved by Mr. Denisa, seconded by Mr. Forsyth. Support.
So this resolution came through the Climate Action Committee and received some attention relative to all of the proposals that counties like St. Lawrence and others are seeing in the way of potential solar development. What hadn't been happening is a plan for the other end. We're told at least up to this point, there's about a 20-year life cycle. There hasn't been regulations established that we're aware of that provide for the disposal, proper disposal and care of on the other end. Some of them in this county, you're aware, probably are getting, within 5 or 8 years of those, of that life cycle. So this was something that NICEAG committee and then onto the full board of NICEAG felt important to request that those regulations be adopted.
Okay, any questions for Mrs. Doyle? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carried. The next resolution coming from NICEAG is calling on the state of New York to allow for county home rule authority regarding employment residency requirements. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Vice President.
So we've been talking for months now about how difficult it is to recruit employees. This is not to provide an opportunity to give an advantage to folks who don't live in the county. Many times this board's gone on record indicating the importance of employing local folks. However, being that around the edges of the county, there may be folks who are qualified, capable, and there's an interest to hire them. This would just be another opportunity for the reduction of a limitation on who can be hired. So the request is ask the state to provide home rule authority. So the board would be able to have this discussion, have a public hearing, be able to entertain the public's input on this as well.
Okay, any questions for Mrs. Doyle concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Our next resolution is supporting the efforts to improve probation and alternatives to incarceration in New York State in order to protect the public and reduce reliance on prisons, jails, and detention. Moved by Mr. Lightfoot, seconded by Mr. Perkins. Mrs. Doyle.
So dwindling over the last decade has been funding for probation in a variety of sources. We've seen a few grants come through for home monitoring. We've seen, I believe, the reduction down now to about 12%, closer to 10 next year. What this resolution is asking, in light of all of the changes that have happened over the last year and a half, is a recognition of funding necessary to provide these options. And if you are looking at the be it further resolved, it's asking for 100% funding to return to. I don't believe the legislation ever changed to allow them to. It just was subject to appropriations, similar to some other areas of the budget that we see. The law hasn't changed, the funding level has. So this request 100% of all pretrial services not be required if the term is less than a year in incarceration. But also it talks a little bit about the need to bring back some of that funding and the function of alternatives to incarceration.
Any questions, Mr. Smithers?
I can understand your words about providing funding for probation, but it seems like, maybe I don't understand this, but it seems kind of vague and talks about alternatives to incarceration and reducing reliance on prisons. And it's just a short while ago, we were encouraging them to use the prisons, which were being closed because of low prison population. So it seems like this is doing the opposite thing, encouraging them not to put people in prison. So it doesn't seem to go together.
I think part of the challenge was seeing their actions moving away from prison funding, probations and other areas suffered. So I think the challenge that NISAC took up was, if we're going to move away from that, we need to restore funding to probation. We need to restore funding levels to alternatives to incarceration if we're not going to continue the model of prison use. That's what we're seeing. I understand your point.
Okay, anyone else? All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion
No.
carried. No, Mr. Smith is a no. The next resolution is authorizing the chair, calling on New York State to sufficiently invest in 911 funding to ensure proper maintenance of the existing system to prepare for the next generation 911. Moved by Mr. Denise, second by Mr. Burke.
So this is certainly an important resolution for the activities that the board's considering these days relative to our 911 center and the potential upgrades for the next 12 months. What this talks about is a national initiative to update the 911 infrastructure across the country. The NG, the next generation 911. We have been successful with some of the grants that the state makes available to us. We have made some purchases in preparation for the upgrade to the center. We are currently working on design for a new center. So this seemed in line with the actions the board's already taken a look at conceptually at this point, but also the importance of funding this necessary service across the county.
Mr. Burke.
Do we know how much money we've received in the last 5 years from one system?
You mean the surcharge?
The surcharge, yeah, in the text here, it looks like the state has diverted over $100 million other causes.
We can get that in the report.
And I'm all in favor of getting our money back. 911, the question is, have we already got it? If we have, maybe we shouldn't be asking for disproportionate.
Fair
Any questions for Mrs. Doyle?
enough. The last 5 years, John, you're looking for just a.
Well, I know we built a lot of towers,
Yeah,
you know,
the
and
county hasn't had to put money in.
we've got a lot of money in the state. So again, I'm always in favor of asking for, you know, how the balance is.
Get that one.
So I believe I can remember when one of our previous emergency directors said millions, that was owed to St. Lawrence County. The charges are actually all on landline.
For the surcharge, yes. But I think he's also referring to the grant funds that the state pools together and then distributes by counties.
Be interesting to see where that 100 million went in those non-911. What initiatives are being funded by the surcharges, which are not 911. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next resolution is urging the governor and state legislators to enact record increases for local highway, bridge, and culvert programs to assist counties in maintaining critical infrastructure. By Mr. Smithers, second by Mr. Forsyth.
So certainly timely with the conversation and presentation received tonight from Mr. Chambers. This is requesting, acknowledging the changes in Operation Favor Potholes, also looking at the off-bridge, off-system bridge program, but looking at flat receipt of funds from CHIPS. I think it's important to address the idea that funding is doing. county's roads.
Questions on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next resolution is urging that awards under the Bridge New York program be finalized and announced in a timely manner. Moved by Smithers, second by Ms. Curran.
So the Bridge New York program, just as an example, in 2021 was announced on December 15th. As you're aware, our budget process concludes by the beginning typically of October, but this year of November. So you're also seeing, and Don referenced it tonight, sometimes a need to modify our budget to address what we actually end up receiving. So this is making the request to provide for more timely compensation and not to be awarded to counties in New York State.
Any questions for Mrs. Doyle? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. The next resolution in support of raising the child care subsidy rate and increasing the total allotment of social services to improve equitable access to child care across New York State. This table, is there a motion to remove from the table? Mr. Burke, second by Mr. Minelli.
Did you skip one?
Yeah, we skipped one.
Oh, I got ahead of myself. All right, let me go back. Sorry, folks. That resolution is urging the governor and state legislators to grant design / build construction authority to counties in New York City. Is there support for that? Moved by Mr. Denise, second by Mr.
So this resolution references a process that the county's been interested in for a number of years. Part of the challenge is it's not against the law, shall we say, but it makes it very difficult with the regulations and how counties are required to respond. So this would ask the state to consider authorizing the design build construction authority, and it would provide for additional options. It doesn't mean you have to use design build, but it gives you another option related to construction activities. And I think the more flexibility that you have relative to construction projects, the better off the taxpayers.
Mr. Chambers, can you give us an example of this legislation?
The design build is primarily better suited for larger projects. They consultant contractor partner together, usually that is large projects. Like at best, one of our effective projects. It also do design build very well. Or it's a very large bridge project, I can see that.
So this authority now is coming from the state then,
For lack of it.
or lack of it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any questions on this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes. Once again, in support of, the resolution is in support of raising the child care subsidy rate and increasing the total allotment to social services to improve equitable access to child care across New York State. It was moved by Minelli, seconded by Mrs. Haggard and Mr. Burke. I'm sorry, Mr. Burke, actually. So we need to bring it up to the table. That would be that motion. So got ahead of myself. Okay, so this resolution is on the table for discussion. So we have to move now. Okay, all right. Kurt has his hand up first, I believe.
Should take a vote.
Okay, so we do have to take a vote. All those in favor of taking it on the table, please raise your hands. Or signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's off the table. I'm sorry. Right. Mr. Burke, please.
Last week, Perry raised a very valid point. That believe parents should raise their own children. This is, I guess the way I see it, this is removing barriers for people who might otherwise work. It's actually my perspective, giving them the opportunity to. I'm all in favor of.
Fair enough.
So just an update on the resolution, as these resolutions come to the NISAC and we bring them forward, mid-March when this comes forward, and then of course the budget carries out its process. And at this point, the budget has allowed for the subsidy to occur. So it's kind of a resolution in hindsight, I guess. And what I would say is, while I'm sure having a parent as the primary caregiver to a child, whether it's a mother or a father, in my case, it's my husband that does most of the child rearing, and I'm sure he does it better than I do. We need people in the workforce, right? We have for sale sign or for hire signs everywhere. And one of the huge barriers to getting people in the workforce is the cost of childcare and a minimum wage job. So when you don't bring much home for a paycheck, it's hard to fathom being away from your home and your children and having them being taken care of by somebody else. The last I looked, it was about probably a year and a half or 2 years ago, but I know child care facilities in Messina, $35 to $40 a day per child. So you think about that in a minimum wage job, and if you're sending 2 children, it's almost pointless to even go to work. And then, with the subsidy, so the subsidy is, I mean, it's a little bit of the Band-Aid, honestly, in the presentation that I had the opportunity to hear at NISAC. The subsidy is a little nuancy, and I don't think that we oftentimes realize that. So the subsidy comes 8 weeks after the fact, and it's only based on attendance. So the state doesn't reimburse if the child doesn't show up. However, the child care provider has already bought the supplies, any food, anything else that they incur, any cost, extra help, cleaning, laundering services, anything that they have to provide to run their household as a child care center, certified center, they've already incurred those costs, and then they don't get the reimbursement, of course. So that's a nuance with the subsidy. And there was, one other thing I was going to mention is many other counties in New York State have already started to use their CDBG grant money to actually increase this subsidy before New York State put it in their budget. So, I think we definitely saw through COVID how important it is to have access to childcare for a workforce. And we need workers, and the more people we have out there that are earning, they're spending, and then, and it's a cyclical, it invests in our own economy, and we all benefit from it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the good fortune of meeting with our own Miss Rand and the new Commissioner of Social Services this afternoon, and they brought me up to date on this block grant. Anyone who would want to see more detail, they can go to the OCFS website. But one thing that our experts pointed out to me.
Sorry, go ahead. Listen,
Okay.
I'm just
Okay.
asking Mr. Seaver if he'd like to comment. Go ahead.
Oh, I'd love him to if he cares to. I don't want to put him on the spot. Our problem in our county is caregivers. We don't have enough people that are providing the service. So it's a double-edged sword. I love what Mr. or Mrs. Terminelli has said about the fact that working a minimum, I don't know how people do it. I don't know how they do it, but working a minimum wage job with 2 little kids in daycare, it's impossible. And that is somebody sitting at home. Okay, but I did want to give a shout out to our own DSS department and helping me come up with all the information that we needed.
Felicia.
I listened to Mr. Smithers' comments last week. And I look at this a little bit differently. And I agree that the deterioration of the family unit is supposed to cause an awful lot of problems. However, there are people that have to work, and without having access to childcare or being able to afford childcare, I think in a lot of circumstances, the children are left to grow up. They're not, they have no supervision. They're not raised, they grow up. And yeah, so I think we've got, we've got an opportunity to do something. And that was a fairly common theme of a lot of the letters that we received. in regards to the ARPA fund was the issue around healthcare, or excuse me, child. That a lot of our folks had to make the decision whether they're going to work, you know, try and find someplace. And as you know, there's a number. There's a maximum number that each provider can have. So I think there's some opportunity here for us to do.
Now, I'm gonna just repeat again that I don't think it's the government's job to raise our children. I understand there's a need for childcare. That is a problem. I just don't think it's the government's job to fix it. I don't think the government can fix it. I think people that are looking for jobs, employers that are looking for workers, they can work to provide more flexible employment conditions, situations, and they can increase wages. We've have a law about minimum wages. There's employers that are offering wages that we didn't think possible in order to gain employees. And I think I would encourage employers to do more in that area rather than look to the government to fix this. When I think about how we want our government to spend money, I don't think this falls in the category that I would approve of. So I can't support it.
Comment?
If anybody has questions.
Service, we provide services. That's what government does, and childcare is an infrastructure service. We can't put people out there if we don't have a way, if they don't have a way to pay. And I mean, we provide those same services with SNAP benefits, with any other benefit that's to close the gap for people that need a little bit of assistance. And that's what this subsidy does. And I mean, we can throw the money out there in the form of a subsidy, but like Mrs. Haggard said, access is another critical component, and that's where that infrastructure money for childcare will come in, and hopefully we'll be able to do something positive with that as well. Yes.
Mr. Forsyth.
I agree with both of you. We were fortunate. My wife was a stay-at-home mom. We homeschooled, you know, we did it all and we enjoyed it. And I wish more families would do it. But you're right, government does have to help out in some instances, and this is one of them. Childcare is an astronomical cost. I hear the prices now. It used to be $2-3 an hour right here. Gee, those are gone, way gone. So I'll support the resolution. I can support the concept. I do think it is throwing a Band-Aid at it. You know, there's no question about it, but it's a step in the right direction. So Harry, I agree 100%. There's no way better to raise your kids and do it yourself. So, I agree.
And I too agree that it is a step in the right direction. It's an impossible situation for a young family today with an infant or infants to provide for them in the way they should be provided for while mom and dad are at work. As a parent of 5 children, I know very well what the hardships are with taking care of children and jockeying schedules. My issue is with the lack of clarity in this resolution, and not through your fault, but with the state. What exactly does the state propose as far as paying for this service? Is it a reimbursable thing? Is it a grant type of thing? I think we ought to know that. The other thing that I think we ought to do is to agree, if you will, that this is a state program being promulgated by the state, or will be if they agree to do it. And if that's what they're going to do, then they should pay for it. I don't want to end up like we did with the AIM money, with the needy hospitals and nursing homes, and having to foot the bill for this, because this could be right out of sight. It really could. So Mr. Sieber is nodding that I think he can tell me or give me an answer to my question regarding grants.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a grant. Excuse me, my voice is kind of.
And it is paid in some instances directly to the providers, in some instances it's paid directly to the parents based on the needs and the situation that exists. Everyone's different. There's a sliding scale based on the family's income. There are eligibility requirements set up. They have to be, under 200% of the poverty level. So that table is actually in the packet. No, they don't. Okay. I do have this here. There's numbers. Based on family size, 80% of the poverty level, say a family of 4, federal poverty level is $26,500. So if the family is under $53,000, which is 200% of that, then they would be eligible for a portion of that grant based on their income on a sliding scale.
If I may. Where does the money come from? Does it come from the state directly to the parents or to the caregiver? I'll let you answer that first.
Well, it is a state community block grant, and I'm not as familiar with it yet as I probably should be. But I know the money does come from New York State.
Okay, if I may. Given if the figure that they're putting in here is an accurate figure, $16,000 a year, and I certainly assume that not everybody would have a full-time caregiver, and not everybody has an infant, where it's certainly more expensive to deal with. But does that money come through the county? And if so, are we prepared as a county to deal with something that could have a tremendous amount of money and probably a tremendous amount of documentation and paperwork and, whatever the state of New York always demands and requires. So what about that?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So it is a block grant currently. I'm not sure what the additional funding source is. That's what it calls for. I can tell you that right now, our allocation, and it's a block grant allocation, so we renew. In 2021 was $1.3 million. Over that, plus a rollover of a little over $1.2 million, providing a total ceiling of available claims of $2.6 million. And claims total $1.1 million. We had unspent funds with block grant of $1 million. It's I think the legislature had talking to staff over there. It seems to be an issue of providers who participated in the program and signing up. Challenges with the certification process, with lack of providers in general.
Okay, well, that still doesn't answer my question about staffing levels to deal with that grant money. I'm assuming from what I see, I don't see anything any different, that the grant money is going to come to the county or does come to the county. The county's going to have to dole it out and keep track of it and report on it and investigate if the need arises. What are we looking at for staffing increases to do something like that?
That's something that we're already doing, sir. So it's not an additional service. We're already doing that. And because there are unspent funds every year, we definitely have the money to pay for it. It's a service that has been going on. It's not going to require any more staff. They're just adding more money to the pot. The issue we have is we can't spend all of it because we don't have enough providers. So we need to do some work on that. But in terms of our staff, it's not going to require any more effort.
For now, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone else? I'm sorry. So I'm denied that I'm a member of the Barefoot and Garden Party. But what we are looking at here is a solution for a problem that was created by government. And you go back to the Great Society in 1968, and you track the change in number of two-family or two-parent homes to single parent. It's made been made possible by solutions made by the federal government, which is not the federal, the family is not the federal government's responsibility. Responsibility of raising children is the family itself. And if they need additional support, it is from relatives, family, church, community, and possibly the state, but never the federal government. And so this is what it is. I will support the resolution. But it's a problem that's created by government. And this is a Band-Aid solution, which will create another problem, which will require more Band-Aids. But I will support the resolution. So any further questions? Concerning this resolution? All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carried. So next up, we have a resolution, and that resolution is accepting the ARPA committee recommendations for the American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Forsythe. So really not under any category. As chairman of the committee, I want to thank Mr. Reagan, Mr. Fay, Mr. Arquette, and actually Mrs. Haggard filled in for a time of the last meeting, which Mr. Arquette, because of work, was unable to attend. The committee has been striving for making sure that this $20.9 million was our goal was to have it benefit everyone in the county in some capacity. When I was initially charged to be chairman by Chairman Sheridan, I immediately went to Mrs. Doyle to come up with ideas about county needs and what we could expend this money on to meet the goals of the committee, which is the county-wide benefit. And the first $16.9 million of that does that. And I'll turn now this over to Mrs. Doyle to explain the categories.
Sure, so just running through the sentence of the resolution, we look back at the origin for a few months ago, seeing these funds being announced, working up to May, almost a year, where we saw the interim final rule release, which sort of gave us some guidance about what it could be used for. But it left a lot of gaps, and so the Department of Treasury also took the opportunity to accept comments until the middle of July from counties, any municipality across the country for ways in which they could improve before they issued the final rule. So when we met with NISAC in the fall, NISAC indicated they weren't certain that there would be a final rule released. However, January, we saw a final rule released by the Department of Treasury for the uses. They did take, I believe it was over 1,000 unique comments based upon their interim final rule information. And so that was to go into effect April 1st. Here we sit on April 25th. The committee also, one of their first acts was to provide needed latitude to conduct a survey, which they were provided the results. You've all seen those. We've shared those with county employees. We've shared those with the public for the input related to its uses. From there, they also took a look at final rule and understood that their interest was countywide beneficiaries. In looking at a variety, everything from individuals to businesses to organizations across all industries, interest in receiving some of these funds came in to all of you, to my office, to the public, sharing those to the media, all kinds of conversations about how and when these funds are going to be used. So just to clarify, it's written here in the resolution, the county's in receipt of the first tranche, and that is $10.4 million. County will receive the next or second tranche, they call it, a similar timeframe in June of this year. So part of my conversation with the group was to try and bring forward recommendations prior to receiving that second tranche of funds. Working with the Treasurer's Office, arranging how those funds will be accounted for is very important to us, making certain that a very transparent separation from general fund, capital funds, all of the variety of the funds in the county are kept separate, and looking at what should be utilized here. So under the now therefore, you see the totals associated with 20.9 million. And that breakdown is 24% in that emergency communications equipment. And I can expand on that a little bit. We've been talking a lot about the facility changes that are going to take place across the street from public safety. But what we hadn't been talking about was the upgrade to radio equipment. There's an RFP out now that hopes to convert, this is a technological conversation that I can only do a little bit of, but to upgrade the communication level and ability of all of the departments in the county. And one of the reasons I'm told we haven't done that over the years is because the local departments couldn't fund the change in equipment necessary to come over to the new frequency. So in moving toward that now, what we've talked about is using a formula driven by Jefferson County, who's just completed this project, to provide based on a formula that drives how many pieces of equipment in terms of trucks and communication needs in each of the departments around the county. So these funds are to be used for that. So it would be pushed out to all of the departments in the county, not preventing them from spending some of their own funds to acquire as many as they would like, but it would make sure that each and every rescue squad and fire department was able to communicate with the county. So that was the emergency communication component. And my understanding is, and we haven't seen it yet, and we all know any predictions relative to what something's going to cost these days needs to be increased immensely, considering what we're all dealing with. But we set aside 5 million of potentially what would be over 10 or 12. We aren't certain of that, but we do know it's going to be expensive. And what we want to make sure is that all the departments have access. So that's the first piece. The second piece was providing an opportunity for all of those organizations to have a conversation about receiving some of these funds at a variety of levels. And our partners at the IDA are willing to assume that responsibility with guidance from the ARPA committee driven by the board for how those funds would be spent. You also see the breakdown of certain amounts, 7 of them, I believe, and that percentage breaks down to addressing some of the county needs we understand, one being the need for CDL drivers. And that certainly isn't unique to St. Lawrence County, but it's a big need in our county. Also, a conversation we just completed on childcare. This looks at the model, and my friends in Lewis and Jefferson County have shared all of their documentation for their program so that we can model a similar one to increase the slots of available daycare in St. Lawrence County. So there's some 20% of funds within that million that separates out from the 4 to 3, and 10% set aside for another need that we've been talking a lot about lately for EMT. So those partnerships, I think, the CDL program runs through the press center in Canton, the EMT programs moved over to Clarkson University. So we also have some local solutions that don't require folks interested in those licensures to travel out of county to receive them. We understand part of the problem is the length of time it takes to either meet the requirements, have all the classes, separate off from work to do the required training. But at least in this instance, the barrier is reduced for the cost. And there's I think an opportunity to talk about what it looks like on the other side. People are applying for this, and they're eligible, getting those funds out to be used. And then there's 40% left in this grouping for infrastructure. So Cornell Cooperative Extension and Governor Martin St. Lawrence County Fair. The chairman, I think, can speak to those, as well as the potential for 30% of this for the Clifton Pine Hospital. And I'll share the presentation just so you have a refresher of everything they're planning to do with their emergency room and imaging, because they recognize their remote location doesn't provide the opportunity to be a full service hospital. So they're not trying to do that anymore. They really focused their efforts. They made a presentation. The understanding, I think, is that 287,000 be dedicated to them. The balance of this was also later in the resolution talked about a holistic vest for a probation department who applied for a grant, who were unsuccessful in receiving the grant, so provide some funding for them as well. Moving on then to the broadband development, the board's established a committee that gets very active in their conversations and their pursuit of viable grants that will provide additional option for broadband development and installation in St. Lawrence County. So this is, I think, twofold in that not only for the ability to have that development completed, but to have matching funds available if grants are available. So one of the things that happens for grants that have matches is we have to go through the board process, identify the reason for it, and seek support to have the match approved. In this case, it would provide this amount of money for grants so that they know whatever grant they apply for, there would be matching funds available. And I think that's an important piece of the committee's effort to ensure this already difficult process that ECC Technologies has helped us in the study that Dan did, identify specific areas that are struggling more than others. So that's primarily the discussion held so far on the broadband development side. Also, a conversation important to the committee was the development and repair sewer and water projects. So they set aside some funds, $3 million, for utility projects. Then on the $5 million following that is for county capital projects. And that breakdown at the moment, I think you've all heard me talk in budget about our facility management project. And that essentially allows us to management plan, I apologize. So that provides in each building on county campus or that we are responsible for an annual ongoing maintenance required to take care of our facilities. We fund that in our contingency each year at about $500,000. However, we understand that to fully fund that, it's $4.2 million. We don't fully fund that, and we move along and identify priority projects. However, we're undertaking some capital projects before approval, hopefully this year, that would provide for the public safety complex, the 911 center, the district attorney's office moving, that will also relocate training and conflict defender, and it will bring the civil office down with the road patrol side. So those plans are coming together. We'll bring those to you for approval. Also looking at relocation of our buildings and grounds department out to where our warehouse currently is, and then relocating our warehouse materials after we go through and purge the ones we no longer need. Again, there's a number of department updates we've deferred over the years based upon our ability to fund and finance those projects. So as needs change, as service levels change, we've been evaluating those, and the committee felt strongly that some of those, the ARPA funds should be utilized for that. And remember, they just adjusted, if you hadn't heard already, there's an increased amount that counties can take relative to their lost revenue. It was, I believe it was 4.2, now it's 5.2%, but they also made eligible up to $10 million per county, per municipality, so that those funds could be used for county purposes. So this, in this situation, would provide $5 million for that. And lastly, $900,000 for the ash tree removal relative to the impact of the yellow ash borer that we're seeing, and it would schedule some reforestation. So again, in these areas, really trying to spread wide the benefit or the opportunity for the benefit of these funds, because we all understand these are one-time funds. So the but-for argument was made. Some of these projects, and certainly with our partners at the IDA, being able to get some of these projects completed, but for having the funding, the one-time funding, was important to the committee as well. I don't know if I'm going to share on Governor.
Sure.
There.
So some of the individual requests, we're talking about childcare tonight. So we had a request from Mark Lashwa, similar to what you've seen, that's in the press, that's working well in Jefferson and Lewis County, training people to be providers, exactly what the resolution. Part of tonight, the Governor Fair was looking for 50,000, and that was to make 18 camping sites and actually make improvements to the 4-H building. Once again, I believe the fair is a county-wide event. Patrick, we had talked to Patrick Kelly about the CDL request. The request was actually for 520,000 to provide tuition for CDL drivers. CDLs benefit the county. We can't probably say you take this class, you got to come to the county, but benefit the milk truck drivers, the haulers, anybody here in St. Lawrence County, individual employment. That we funded with 287,000. Cooperative extension requested $50,000, and that was for renovations to the building. It actually, again, a device that actually does peeling. They purchase vegetables from local farmers, and there's currently serving 21 schools. School participating is really hell. Because they don't like carrots. Right. Clifton Fine Hospital is actually asking for $1 million. They're short 1.6 because of the geographic location. They're about 40 minutes from Devonor. They're an hour and a half to their. I think Samaritan is the organization that they work with. Couple lakes distance. We thought geographically that we could offer them $300,000. Start. The ballistic vests. There is an interest in some of the members of probation interested in getting them. We've actually allocated about $13,000 of the 14 individuals. The EMS tuition, we know that all the fire or all the ambulance services, about 19 of them actually up front put tuition for people to attend these classes. And that if the individual passes the test or the successful in the course, then that tuition is reimbursed, it still needs 19 has to be done. And from reports, as you may say, Waddington sponsors 3 individuals. All 3 pass the course. I guess the pass rate is about 70%. So let's say 2 do, maybe they only get 1 of them that actually agrees to serve. It's really much more time. So we thought that providing $100,000, we could do over 100 tuitions for those 19 entities. There is an interest, we don't have any figures for an airboat. All the bodies of the water that we have here, it's just snowmobiles, people getting fishing, getting trapped out on the ice. We thought it would be the interest that this county actually have an airboat. So Matt Denner was unable to get those figures to us at this time, but we've allocated about $150,000 for that. If any other members of the committee would like to speak, Mr. Fay, Mr. Reagan, Taggart, Mr. Eckbat. Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, there was a lot of, as everybody just said, there was a lot of folks, organizations reaching out for, you know, allocation through this process. And I think that the committee did a great job in making sure that whether or not organizations have been named specifically throughout the resolutions, that many of the organizations that have reached out to us will be affected positively through these expenditures. So again, I think that I think we did a good job in trying to make sure that the majority of our constituents and citizens across the county got a positive effect from this money. So a difficult thing, and I hope for some of those who feel as though they're left out are patient, because you'll see that once the money is starting to be doled out, that it may go in your direction. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think it's important for everyone to understand that the way this is being done, whether, you know, you're talking about a small village or a fire department from a rural hamlet or from a major village, you know, the emergency communications equipment funds are going to help those fire departments, ambulances, squads to afford this high-tech equipment that they need in order to communicate with our central dispatch service. You know, we're setting aside money for economic development and tourism and a water and sewer development fund for the purpose of encouraging growth in our economy. We have many communities in the county that need assistance in upgrading some of their water and sewer in order to encourage the growth of businesses and growth in their community. What we're going to do is stick Patrick and his people with the task of helping to come up with a way to do that fairly. We're not going to get into the weeds of it. And, you know, they're going to take a look at various economic development and tourism needs around the county and invest some of this money where it can do the most to help grow our economy. Because in the wake of COVID, in the wake of, you know, all the various problems that we've seen over the past couple of years, this money was sent our way in order to spur the economy. And a great way of doing that is to invest it in growth and in helping to create new jobs and in helping preserve the jobs that we have. I want to commend Margaret for her hard work in defending the broadband money from Kevin's and my efforts. She wouldn't give an inch. And but I think it's important that, you know, we do this, invest in the future of this county by expanding broadband services out into many rural areas, because the only opportunity that we have in many of our rural areas is to help grow businesses in those areas by providing the broadband service they desperately need in order to either bring a job to St. Lawrence County or grow their own business. So, you know, it's the committee, there's no perfect way to distribute a lot of money. And, you know, and some people are going to ask the question, why are you putting money into ash tree removal? Well, the reality is that on a lot of our rural county roads, there are stretches where there's lots of ash trees, but no one is going to cut those ash trees down before they literally explode as the ash borer moves into St. Lawrence County. So by appropriating this money now, we have an opportunity to reduce the problems that, you know, we otherwise would see if we had not made this effort. Plus, I think it's most important to realize that over the next 10 years, this county has some important needs that we were going to have to go to the taxpayer for and go to the tax levy to obtain the money to renovate the old jail, to update the central dispatch service so that it's able to handle the needs of communities across this county. You know, we've talked about the need to take over dispatch for Ogdensburg, for Potsdam, for other communities around the county. You know, this money is going to make that possible. So, you know, I would thank my colleagues for working together on this to try to come up with something that over the long term can help us keep our tax levy stable, make important investments that need to be made so that we don't have to turn to the tax levy, so we don't have to turn to the taxpayer. You know, this is a one-time shot of federal money. And this is a great opportunity for us to invest in needs that we're not going to go away. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'd just like to thank all the people that emailed me, wrote me a letter, or talked to me on the phone, or stopped me on the street. I'm just sorry we didn't have funds to fund everything. Thank you.
You have your hand.
Is it time for questions or you still?
Comments or questions? Jim?
Okay, yes, I can.
Go ahead, Mrs. Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a comment and a question. First of all, thank you to all of you that worked so hard on this, and I want to thank the legislator, Arquette in particular, for asking me to be there last week to defend my broadband money. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Arquette. I recently spoke to an individual who's very familiar with the sewer system in Potsdam. And we just invested, I was there, $17 million in improvements. This was achieved through grants and bonding for it. It's up to par, it's working great. Now we have our water treatment center that needs something, and the West Dam hydropower, always something, right? So I'm wondering, the money that we've allocated for water and sewer, is that going to be allocated on need or how? Somebody explain, are we getting into the weeds on this today?
Not get into the weeds today. money is set aside for basically local match. That, and how we determine that, I think we're going to leave up to the IDA's to determine how that's done. So if this resolution passes, part of this is, there's about $3 million, there's 4 million basically for economic development, tourism, the things that I listed off, take up about $1 million of it. So the ARPA committee will be meeting with Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly initially had his request, and that was like 4.7 million, which we addressed some of those on there, they're very valuable. So I think in the sense that the ARPA committee, if this resolution passes, come back to the board once again, if there's agreement on, we'll have, probably have Mr. Kelly actually do a presentation of how these monies will be spent, and how this remaining 3 million will be dispersed.
Okay, so that's just my follow-up, if I may.
Yeah.
There were a couple of projects that I was very adamant about trying to get funding for. And I don't give up very easily, so I'm thinking that this is an opportunity for people who were not funded this time around to look at these categories and perhaps apply for funding through those categories, such as tourism,
Right.
for the North Country Children's Museum or the Arts Council. Okay, thank
So,
you.
and that's the purpose of it. There's 4 million in there. Like I said, I'm repeating myself, but the projects I listed up add up to about $1 million. The Governor Fair extension and there's about $3 million, of which can be allocated. There's a good possibility with the infrastructure bill, which really don't know what's happening, that on the federal level, that's these funds could be allocated someplace else, possibly, if it's not needed. So I know it, I don't think that was the answer. Mr. Berg.
Need to rain on anybody's parade here,
Go ahead.
but I mean, I'm all in favor of 5 million. You said it. That's my question. I didn't realize that we were. I just think I think it opens doors. Harvard saying, not state. Incurring extra expenses. Probably you skip from town to town. But I think the nine actually station is great. Broadband development, good, but we failed to give any money back directly to our citizens. Think of what Ogdensburg did. You know, whether you approve of their initiative. I felt it was a really good way to spend some of that money, giving that for 5,000. I mean, and I'm not, and I know the counter to that is that sort of what Jim said, save taxpayers. Well, maybe. I'm not sure if anybody ever told us that to renovate the old jail. I think we certainly have to make sure that it's got a good roof and that it's weather tight, because our heating system is there. But there are options here. And as we look at options, and again, I'm trying not to be critical of the committee, but I don't know how to do this. So, being somewhat critical.
It's welcome. I mean, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
There's 15 different members with all different ideas.
And I just think that it's okay to feed the bureaucracy to some extent. Health and safety, always paramount. And again, if it's going to cost us 10 million to bring our emergency services up to speed, then let's spend the 10 million on emergency services. And then decide where the rest of the money is going to go. Again, the ash tree removal, that's safety. Some of the trees you see along the edge of the road, they're waiting for maybe not even a strong wind, but some kind of a wind to knock them down. Again, I don't want to go into the other details. I like the idea of the CDL training. I like dollars. I would support all of them. But I struggle with 5 million for county capital projects. I think if it's important enough, let's take 2 million of that on the other 3 million, or whatever it takes out of county. We should have some skin in the game. But I do think that we need to turn some of this back over to our citizens, some form or another. Because we're the ones, a number of them are the ones that suffered through COVID. Some of the businesses did as well. But I'd be interested, I got an estimate for my driveway to be done next year. They're not doing it this year. They said the businesses are, they told me that the businesses were doing exceptionally well. And a number of people lined up to have their pavement done. All I know is what I'm told. And so I don't know, Patrick, you might have a better idea as to the businesses. But I really struggle with this. I think that, again, it's okay to feed the bureaucracy, but I think that there has to be a balance there. And we need to figure out how to turn some of this money back to the taxpayer.
I'll save my comments for the end, as you know, I do, Mr. Forsythe. That's the proper way.
I appreciate the effort of everyone on this committee. There's no easy solution to this one. And the weeds are gonna come out without a doubt, sooner or later. And I'm not gonna get into the weed section. One thing I thought you would tie this into a little bit was, and I kind of thought that was why Don made such a lengthy presentation earlier, was roads and bridges. And we just went through, now, whether we can't utilize it or not, that could be it.
So I'll give you a quick answer. I would have loved to put the 20.9 into highways, and so 40 said we can't. It wasn't until the rule changed on April 1st that any of the monies could go to even something as corporate. So that's why we were blocked.
No, and I appreciate it. And it just, to me, with what he presented earlier and what we were looking at, and you talk the safety of all our citizens, the roads and bridges are the safety of all our citizens. So, I just was a little surprised with that, but I appreciate everything you've done, and I'm sure there'll be bugs in this process, but we'll get through it. But, thanks for the effort.
Anyone else? Sarah, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to say thank you. We're trying very hard to increase our tourism, but one of the things that we think about with increasing the number of people is being able to provide safety, emergency medical services, things like that. So I appreciate you putting money aside for that airboat. It can be used all over the county, and it will cut in half the time we wait for an airboat. Normally it comes from Alex Bay or the tribe. And we've had situations where that's been a problem, so I appreciate you taking it.
Some consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brief. The emerald, the ash tree removal, I think that's great. It was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that I was on the environmental management. And that was something that we were talking about then, the emerald ash borers. And we went around a number of places and we marked them and tagged them. And the big thing with the emerald ash borers then, as now it's worse, where they're located along the county right away. And they can fall into the roadways, they can damage the infrastructure. There wasn't any money for that. So I look at this as a cost avoidance, and I think it's money well spent. And the other things, and as everyone knows, I was very adamant about my belief that money should be spent. And as I said, I believe that the ARPA funding should be better spent across the county on projects that will affect the greatest number of people. And I think this does that.
Anyone else? Oh,
Just a couple more comments. Toward the end of the resolution, it identifies, we'll be talking with an agency, we'll be talking with Director Malecki on Wednesday. for, I believe they have engaged with other counties to manage these funds for them. Committee felt as though that is something we should consider. But any and all specific appropriations and accounting will come back in front of you, specific to the project for approval specific. So this resolution serves essentially as the concept for committee's outcome and the recommendations. But you will see and continue to see resolutions approving the actual dollar amount relative to these projects. So this won't be the last, certainly. We will, as the chairman said, meet with the IDA, identify sort of the framework. So certainly if there's ideas and suggestions for that, I'm sure there will.
So I'll just read off, Patrick doesn't mind, some of the things that they're interested in supporting. One is the St. Lawrence County Recreation Fund, which is using funds to assist in training of new employees. I'll just be brief, because I'm probably going to have to make a presentation. That resolution passes. The second one is St. Lawrence County Manufacturing Modernization Fund. Did the CDL Tuition Assistance Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, World Tourism Academy, Center for Business and Transition. These are all items that we are asking for approval. We'll be meeting with Patrick to discuss in further detail, and then we will bring it to the board. We'll have Patrick do a presentation about how these any funds can be managed. It's been difficult because the longer that we've gone, the more individual requests have come in. Had one from a tavern, and so that's why we try to focus on all of these. Speaking to John's comment about Ms. Burstow, back to the people, the capital project that is actually moving dispatch. So the opportunity may present itself would actually be required of us to actually having a space that actually will take care of the city of Augsburg and any other municipality to go to a centralized basically dispatch. So it's planning for that. So we did talk about using actual fund balance to do that. And I actually argued with Ruth that she had underfunded this program, and Mr. Bay has some considerable experience in development and building. This capital project was probably underfunded by about $5 million for all the groups. And it's to make this county more efficient, giving us more space, utilizing the jail for storage, which is currently in this warehouse. I don't know if I mentioned that. There's a lot of moving pieces. So we looked at, and back to the people, all this is actually back to the people in some form or another. It's an investment in the future. It addresses the needs. The fact that Mr. Forsyth mentioned highway, which I would have loved to put all these funds towards there. We can use our fund balance. It's actually part of this presentation tonight. $1 million here, $1 million here. We can rely on that fund balance. We're at $38 million. We got it to sufficient level where we need to be. We're at 15% of the 260 million. We're right about where we are. So we have that flexibility. My expectation is that within the next 2 years, that our sales tax will probably be down $5 to $10 million. I could see all this money that's been dumped into Lawrence County by the federal and state government. It's not going to be there with inflation and everything else happening. So this is our presentation. This is the main gist of it. I'm asking for your support. And so let's end discussions, I guess. And all those in favor of the resolution as written, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One opposition, Mr. Church. So Ruth, you'll be setting up Mr. Kelly that our group can meet. Margaret, we will extend an invitation to you as the. You're committed now. All right, so next up is the vacancy review committee with Mrs. Stewart.
So we have one department for you tonight to present a number of positions that is highlighted. That was with us.
Yes, thank you. I do have a number. I have two The first two are motor equipment operators. We have vacancies basically resulted from individuals leaving county employment to basically to one was to the private sector and one was to another municipality. The one of the motor equipment mechanic helper positions was vacation, vacancy due to a promotion within the department due to retirement. So moving up, some of the other individuals moved up the line to fill that vacancy that was previously approved. That one is from a vacancy, and the other is mechanic helper took a position with another municipality within the town. The fifth one is the deputy county highway superintendent position. The individual that was with the department for approximately 2 years took employment with NIDA. And the sixth position, sixth vacancy is so assistant highway administration manager in the department. Primarily to deal with succession planning. Likely to have two most senior folks in my department in the accounting area retire in the coming years. One being primary person at the department probably within the next 2 years, but certainly even the other assistant in the department is eligible at this time. So I think it's crucial to the operation of the department to fill that vacancy, that position for succession planning.
Mr. Smithers.
On the position of deputy county highway superintendent, can you tell us why the benefits are such a high number on that one?
Benefits are usually at the rate that's around 50%.
58. Ranges.
So that is the benefit package for the county with state retirement. So that's an average. So we take 58% no matter basically what, and the county administrator may be able to address that clearer, but I believe that's what we use as just an average. So it's not, maybe not necessarily that, but that's what we use. 58% of the salary is the benefit package. But that's averaged out over the entire county. Good. For a second.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit high. I'm just kidding. The percentage this year, we take an average on an annual basis of what the costs are relative to the salary. So this position may elect not to have health insurance, but that would drastically reduce the amount. Generally speaking, if you have someone who makes $200,000 a year, it's 56.08% in 2022. So it's evaluated every year in the budget process, and that's set. So we plan for, generally speaking, an overall coverage that we provided. They took the largest offer that we have, which is family coverage. But generally speaking, not everyone does. So that's just to give you an idea. And typically what we're also trying to do in that section of the vacancy form is let you know what's budgeted. So if there's an abolish and create, you're looking at a different position, that number may look different, but that's what's expensed this year associated with that position.
That answers your question.
Yeah,
But you can see.
So it's formula driven.
50,000 still seems like a lot
Well,
on a base salary of 76.
It's just a calculation.
Yeah, to give you an idea of what I would.
It's not specific. Won't know until that an individual takes that position and they choose to. I'm sorry, Mr. Perkins.
Yes, I'm not sure if this is oversight or not,
but the two motor equipment operators, they have the same base salary, but the benefits are different. And just doing some calculations here, the net county cost, looks like it's going from the salary of the person leaving plus benefits that was in that proportion. And I think it also goes to the equipment helper too. I think that should probably be based off of what the new wages are. No?
So the way that we bring this in front of you in that section is in the 2022 budget, this is the amount set aside for that person. So the current salary, so the person coming in is probably gonna be a base. So that's why you also have the base salary number there, they should match. So that would be a brand new person coming in, not someone, let's say, that's either being promoted or lateral transferred. This makes the assumption and lets you know what the existing budget amount is for this position.
Okay.
So and we battle over that over the years of new position, do we do existing, but that tells you what we've set aside this year for that position.
We capture the rest.
Anyone have any questions from Mr. Chambers concerning these 6 positions?
Maybe not.
Thank you very much.
So we'll move on to the county administrator's report. Mrs. Doyle. The first resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract and testing laboratories as a group survey and project monitoring for county buildings. Moved by. Mr. Secretary.
So this resolution provides the opportunity for us to conduct a thorough survey similar to the one conducted in the jail 2 years after posted. Because as part of this project, we'll have to remediate any materials such as asbestos or lead paint, things of that nature. We want to get that done early in the process so that we can assess for you over an old bomb shelter, remember, what we're looking at for hazardous materials. We were surprised, if you recall, in the jail hazardous material survey of how few hazardous materials were in that facility. And so one of the things that we're looking at here is to get that assessment done in the public safety complex. But when we go to do the remediation, that we take care of both. So that one mobilization, one occurrence of removing those hazardous materials or wherever we choose to go in the future makes more sense with our recommendation.
Okay, any questions from Mrs. Doyle? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Our next resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Washburn Architects for architectural services for the former sheriff's house in former St. Louis County Jail, and modifying the 2022 budget for the county administrator's office. So moved by Mr. Eustace, second again by Ms. Curran and Mr. Sheridan.
So you may recall last year, the roof over the boiler room, so just behind this building, was replaced, and we were able to do that with our own forces. So in my quest to have our buildings and ground superintendent complete as many projects that we deem priority before he retires, this project is right at the top of that list. So because we had the 1980s in addition added on to the jail, some of you who may have toured that area with me on the second floor have noticed a particular area of water damage where the roof from the building on the 80s edition is pouring into or on top of the building now. So we've known we need to replace the roof on the sheriff's house. We also would like to take a look at the roof material, which is a flat surface roof over the cells, and make sure we bring to you the best recommendation we can, and the architectural services are required in order to do that. We're not looking to change the roof line. We're not looking to make any dramatic changes, only to dry out and replace the roof there, as we probably needed to do for about 4 years.
Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract with GE Flooring Solutions for purchase and installation of flooring, modifying the 22 budget for renovations of the human services complex. Moved by Suzanne Piatto, second by Mr. Forsythe.
So you may recall, a few months back, resolution came forward to replace the flooring materials at the services center. And questions were raised about both the cost attached to the proposal that was provided to you, as well as the ability to have local folks bid on the process. So we tabled that resolution. We also were looking at some other areas of the building to be addressed, and we went out to bid. We received like 4 bids, 2 bids, and on this one, We took the lower of the two, which is before you this evening. We also have included in this the areas in community services. That was the subject of our earlier conversation. You allowed us the ability to move forward in just the opioid treatment program center space already, and we've done that. We had some existing funds we could use. But this is for the remainder of the community services department. This also provides for the Department of Motor Vehicles. And for those of you familiar with the building, the former IDA space, we currently rent that space out. All areas still have their original parking. So we'd like to make those replacements here. We have been able to offset with some district funds that Ashland City with 190,000 of those, or I apologize, about 40,000 of those. And so we're only really needing to utilize 32,000 out of that 500,000 that we set aside for capital projects.
Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next up is authorizing the chair to sign an amended agreement with United Helpers Care Incorporated for space located at 100 Ford Street, Hawkinsville, New York, and modifying the 2022 budget for the Department of Social Services. Moved by Mr. Lightfoot, second by Mrs. Curran.
So this resolution comes to you following the recommendations I made to you last month in finance relative to our pilot program of having Children's Services initiate a separation off from 6 Judson Street location and occupy Augustburg space that is owned by United Health. So with board support of my recommendations, we're moving forward to occupy the entire space in the suite. And that will also allow us to further move some staff out of the 3rd floor and occupy the entire space of that suite. That's going to be about another 12 people who will be able to be situated there with another supervisor. You may be hearing some conversations with vacancy about the potential for an additional clerical person. But this really is the next step in making Augsburg a permanent fixture for us. For 3 years, this lease is proposed. It does provide the space in total to us. We have improved our security there. We're still working out the fleet details with the needs to get folks out into the field quicker. But this would allow the space to be occupied until 2025.
Questions or comments?
Sure, I'll be. Oh,
Anyone else? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. The next resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Clear Government Inc. for digital book or digital budget book software platform and modifying the 2022 budget. Excuse me, for the county administrator's office. Who'd like to move this? Mr. Forsyth, second by Mr. Smithers and Mr. Fett.
So we've all, over the years, had conversations about how we make budget process, the budget product, more open and accessible to the public. And so over the last few years, we've looked at a number of different solutions, and I'm bringing to you tonight a recommendation that I have for how we might accomplish it. So ClearGov designed a product that takes the data, they're Munis friendly, so we can give them imported data to import, that will create a number of charts, graphs, easy to follow information about the county budget, both history as well as moving forward when we go through the budget process on an annual basis. So this is something that I believe will transform our budget process to make it more inviting. Certainly, if you don't know what you're looking for necessarily, or you can't track it to a resolution, sometimes you'd rather not be bothered. And that's certainly not what we want for our taxpayers and the folks who pay us to be here. So to help them better understand, but also to help our employees better understand, help legislators better understand. And I think an easy go-to for budget information that also provides a narrative along with it. So some people are visual learners, some people do better with charts and graphs, some people can read the narrative and take more away than they could. And this really starts to serve all those populations. And so it's something I'm very excited about. I will share with you the link. It's a short video. I've shared it with the chairman of this committee. But also that could give you some insight if you'll approve it this evening to decide at the board meeting if it's something to support. I'm very excited about the idea that the budget book that we spend an inordinate amount of time working on essentially year round could be something we can explain to the public in an easier way. What departments do, it can go into the type of narrative that lets folks know the services that are available. And we really want to make sure that it's stepped down to a level that makes sense. that we aren't talking only accounting terms, that we aren't just laying out account numbers and what was last year, what was this year. It doesn't always explain what's happening with the programs and the services. So that's what my hope is to accomplish with this.
Yeah, I looked at it and at first I was kind of skeptical, but then I looked at the example, the township was Terra K, South Carolina. It was pretty interesting that any one of us or any of our constituents could modify what they were looking for. And I just thought the transparency of it all and how you look like and nail it down to what you were actually looking for, whether you had a beef or you had a comment or you just had an interest in actually finding out where the money is going. If you look at the budget book we got there now, we have 2 budget books and we're pretty dry to look at it. And I think it brings it into it real time. That was very interesting. So, they don't have that.
We don't have that here.
Send that out.
Okay. Question?
Yeah, questions or comments? This is the expenditure, it moves up to about $13,000 a year. I did ask, when Ruth was gone, I did ask Dylan if he could, he mentioned how it would help during budget. I don't know, the hours, the budget prep, we'll do the budget together.
Right, in addition to all the reading group. That's how the nickel has done for the approximate amount of time they spend on the task to create something itself. Whatever we're reviewing, very much. I'll put that about approximate. Hard to tell if we have matter for two of this program.
Mrs. Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did you say, Dylan, you might be able to answer this, that it's searchable? So I go in and look for specific. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, we have our budget books. I don't know if any of you have taken a look at them after you get them. But we also like the number of people that come. We know that the number of people on Zoom can go to 200. So if this item is actually available to the public, they can do their own research, whatever their agenda was or whatever, whether, just full transparency. Tailored to whatever their interests are, rather than trying to go through, pull out those codes and say, okay, here's, we spend this much labor here or benefits here or whatever, for this particular department. But I thought it was quite interesting.
And I think it's also possible, much like you track traffic on our website, if we see that it really isn't being utilized, we notice that it's really not hitting the mark with what we want to put out there, we can give notice and separate off. It's not anything that we're locked in.
But I thought individual legislators, if you're looking for answers sometime, nail it down to whatever you're interested in. We'll have to vote on this and then she'll send it out. Be approved at the board meeting. So any further questions or comments concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Last item I have is informational. The first quarter, 2022, in your packets. And again, this is a reminder, you did the summary report, that now we include all funds with the general fund, which typically was all we're receiving. We have included for that the capital projects as well. I think it's important for you to get an understanding of what's happening. And just in that summary report, certainly the 8-page report that's broken down by departments is a specific area for the specific department that you're watching or have knowledge of, or just have interest in. Those details are there. But just in the overall, just to give you some quick statistics, we have 9 departments that are over that 25% mark at this time, mostly driven by revenue. There are 13 departments that await or below what they typically would reflect in revenue. And we're having conversations with them, many of them because of the delay in the state budget. Some of those conversations got delayed about additional funding or what types of funding sources were going to occur. But on the within 5%, you've got 5 departments within below and above. So that's 19 of your departments who fall into that area. The 3 departments that are a little trickier on the summary page to follow, I like to highlight because They don't on the summary page reflect what's happening. Our board of elections, the county clerk, and real property, often you see because they're front loaded with their revenue, board of elections receive 86% of their revenue. So you really do have to go over to the department pages to make sure, and they are, within those 25%, 30% ranges associated with their activity and performance in the first quarter. Similarly, the county clerk coming in at 12% of their revenue so far this year. Again, taking a look at their breakdown between the categories, which is really certainly open always to suggestions or improvements, but we typically give it to you by personnel cost, which is salaries, equipment, the contracts, so the services that are provided, and the fringe benefits. And then we break off the revenue directly by the overall appropriations. So that seems to be a good way to get information to you on a quarterly basis so far. But we are looking at how we can improve those revenues. Often I think we get caught up in, because we only follow immediately the month, even if the claims are submitted on time, getting that turned around and that revenue received and booked into the department doesn't happen until that following year. So we like to point out if there's some real lags in that area so that you know those are caught up, or if there's an issue that needs to be addressed. One of the areas I think that has piqued interest, of course, is health insurance. And I believe Johnny recently shared the update. We currently, as we've been seeing, our increases for the first quarter and just over into April are at $8,003,689. So I think the Health Insurance Committee is aware, looking at strategies, always looking to Burnham to give us ideas or suggestions for how we might improve and reduce those costs. So that's the first quarter report. If there's any specific questions, I'm happy to address them.
Thank you, Ruth. The only one I would question the most is the county clerk. I'm just wondering how the downstream revenue is running. I don't remember the last time she gave us an update on it. So if we could get that, I'd just be curious how that's trending with everything else, because we haven't really heard.
Absolutely. I'm meeting with her for this week, so we'll have something for
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to committee reports. So we
I
have,
have a couple of. It's short.
Thank you.
I have two transfer of funds to report out to you. The first, both of these are actually to close out 2021. So our favorite topic in the shift from 50/50 to 100% for individuals court committed for evaluation needed just another $2,601.64 to close out 2021. A couple of other bills that were paid not related to this that pulled away from the transfer you provided. The other was a payroll error that was uploaded for $250. One account was shy on close that out. So those two will provide us the opportunity. I believe once these resolutions go through, we're very close to closing out 2021. I wanted to mention to you on the COVID update side of things that the reporting piece is getting a little bit challenging. And I'll tell you why. So I've been talking with Dr. Williams about the CDC's report that they were doing only on Thursday evenings, and then they moved to daily. What we can't determine is if the daily is 7 days a week or if that reporting is happening less frequently, like what we're doing. So our friends in Jefferson County may be moving to a slightly more reduced reporting schedule. So I wanted to just bring that to your attention. We're talking about, as I mentioned to you, when we initially moved from the 5 days down to Monday, Thursday, to potentially having it only when the CDC does the updates on Thursdays. But we're having conversations about that, and I'll bring back to you what makes sense for us. But the reporting they'd like to do, at least Jefferson are talking about, is only when there's COVID spikes, bringing those attention to detail, doing it once a month. So we're talking about those types. We want to mention to you at the board meeting next week, we will, in the first few items on the agenda, include recognition ceremony for some of our folks. Also, good news on our hazmat team. Tonight was their first meeting. They had 26 in attendance, and they had 12 more who couldn't attend but offered their absence, and they'll be attending next time. And they do have their first training scheduled for June 26th. So it sounds like, and it's from all over the county. So I think we do have some participation on that front. Also for you, the legislative agendas are printed and in your mailboxes, so please pick those up. And we're tentatively planning for May 4th to deliver. That's the date you could get the best time to meet with our senators. We're working on the assembly now. We'll also include the resolutions that are passed next Monday that have been brought forward through NICEAG in the legislative process. And then the last thing, I wanted to just give you an update on 2 questions that were asked last week when I wasn't here with regard to bachelor's degrees for caseworkers. I believe the answer is yes, it says for the most part, but open competitive caseworker candidates must possess a bachelor's degree or to district option a certification as an RN plus 1 year of experience. So I don't know necessarily that the RN component answers our question, we have there, but that, yes, bachelor's degree. The other was a little bit on the funding associated with the co-location program. We currently have 1 individual paid for by a grant, and the other 2, I believe we only created either last year or the year prior, that second chemical dependency case aid. But the reimbursement is on those other 2 through the claim, and this is a contract with community services, and they receive about 41%, at least that's what they can estimate. But they also claim any of the malpractice insurance liability, software licenses, any of the things attached to having those employees. So I'm not sure if there's any other questions, but that was the update from those questions.
Okay, so committee reports, Board of Health Extension, Mr. Denisha.
Nothing since my last report, Mr. Chair.
Fish and Wildlife Management Board, Ms. Curran.
We have not met since the last time that I reported. However, May 1st does mark the start of pickerel, tiger muskie, and walleye season. You can get the actual new how big does your fish have to be to take it out of the water on the New York State Fish and Wildlife.
Fisheries Advisory Board, Ms. Terminelli.
We have not met. We will be meeting again on May 24th.
Governor Fair Board, Mr. Smithers.
I have no new information.
Mr. Smithers. IDA, Jim, did you want to add to your report? Oh, that's a lot.
I can give a report.
I'm sure you can. It's just as dangerous to actually refer to the Kelly.
I have nothing to add.
There we go. Recreational Trails Advisory Board, Mr. Arquette, see with us. David, Mr. Burns.
Nothing to report, meeting will be tomorrow.
The RBRDA, Mr. Forsythe.
Yeah, the Jim covered most of it. We approved the loan the other, when did we meet? Last Wednesday, was it?
Yes.
And we approved the other half of the loan for Potsdam Specialty Paper. CDP applications were received. I believe there were 12 or 13 total and a little over $200,000 worth of requests. From what I looked at, just quickly, it looks like it's spread throughout the county, so word is out. So good. Patrick will prioritize them. And May 1st is also open a day.
St. Lawrence County Chamber of Commerce, Mrs. Haggard.
I have a few highlights from my report tonight. I forwarded it to all of you so you can peruse the entire thing. Of interest to the public, the tourism dinners on May 25th at Pickens Hall in Hubleton. And obviously an in-person dinner, great networking opportunity for tourism partners and communities. The chamber worked with the county to create 3 email campaigns and subsequent press release to announce the availability of the ATV permit sales and the visitor centers at 101 Main Street in Canton. And they also have the 2022 multi-use trail maps available. There's so much going on with the chamber, and they're getting ready for the great show, the Craft Food and Wine Open Air Market at the wonderful St. Lawrence Power Equipment Museum in Madrid on the 24th of September. And I ask that you all take a look at all the other information that I omitted. I sent it to you. Thank you.
Mrs. Haggard, Soil and Water, Mr. Burke.
Soil and Water did not meet April.
Old and new business. But first up is a discussion on the city of Augsburg changeover property. Mr. Lightfoot.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Back on March 31st, the committee that the chairman named, including himself, legislators Fay, Forsyth, Reagan, and myself, attended a meeting with the Ogdensburg city planner, Andrea Smith. And there were two members of the engineering firm, Barton and Long Judas, were also present on a conference call. As an aside, I gotta say that it was an excellent meeting dealing with Andrea Smith from the city of Ogdensburg. Much better than any other meeting that I have been to involving the hierarchy of the city of Ogdensburg. But that being said, the purpose of the meeting was to see what the city hoped to see from St. Lawrence County in terms of financial assistance to assist them in the costs associated with the removal and disposal of PCB contaminants, concrete, and removal and disposal of contaminated soils. In addition to that, those contaminated soils would have to be refilled. We don't know how much in terms of cubic yards of material that they would need. And so I think that that leaves an open question. The current project went out to bid, as I said, early in April, and we received it, or the city received a response on the 12th. After it was reviewed by the engineering firm, they formally accepted a bid from an outfit called the NRC East Environmental Services. I am, in the material that I have, I'm showing that there was one other bidder, and that other bidder was for $376,000 plus. The NRC East Environmental Services bid was for $239,000 and change. So there's a significant difference there. The engineering firm reviewed the bidding and the documents, and they are satisfied that they met all the requirements, recommended to the city that they accept the bid, which they did. I have no idea yet as to when the work will start, but I guess we'll find out about it in due time. Two of the things that are not included in the cost of this part of the project are an agreement that they currently have with Barton and Long Judas for engineering, and which amounts to $79,474, and an environmental site assessment, $47,054. So right now they're looking at a total cost of that project, and this is a phase of the overall project of approximately $366,000. That being said, looking past this particular phase, they are looking at a similar type of work, removing contaminated concrete, removing contaminated soil on not adjacent properties, but property that is within the shade roller site. And if you go to your emails and take a look at one that Dylan sent out for me, you'll see 3 pages. Here, Dave. Here. You'll see 3 pages. One is a memorandum that came from Andrea Smith. And what it does is it gives you a little bit of history about the standard shade roller and some of the costs that they've incurred to date. The second sheet shows the cleanup, as I explained, and the costs associated with it. The last two sheets are photographs of the site. And if you look at them, the first one you will see is an aerial photograph that was taken in 2008 of the property after it had been abandoned by and taken over by the city. And it shows the relationship of the buildings and where they are on the property. The second one shows an aerial photograph of the shade roller site taken in June of 2021. It looks a lot different. What remains, though, is some of the concrete slabs that actually cover a significant portion of the property. And as such, if you can't see it. Get it? So they don't know what it's going to cost taking up this concrete in doing what they call rubbleizing it. And that is breaking it up, digging it out, breaking it up down to a size of 4 inches. And if it is contaminated with PCBs, it has to be trucked to a location that can dispose of it. That location is in Michigan, I'm told. So transportation costs for something like that, an unknown tonnage, at least at this stage of the game, of how much concrete they're going to be taking out of there. And, you know, how many trips are going to have to make to get that out there and then return, if they are a local company anyway. So I am waiting to hear from Andrea about an estimate on rubbling and perhaps an estimate on the amount of fill that they are going to use or be able to use or are going to be required to use to fill in these holes wherein formerly were contaminated soils. So what they're looking at in the second phase is a assistance in the cleanup of what was called a metal plating area. And they are estimating, based on 2021 figures, $400,000 to cover the cost of doing that. What that would enable them to do is to get a certificate from the state that would allow them to parcel out that property and allow for residential structures to be erected on that property. One of the caveats to that is that they will not be allowed to dig and put in foundations. They'll have to use slabs. Why? I would assume that because disturbing the soil is going to probably bring up more contaminants. And apparently they must feel that leaving it there is not going to cause any issues. But there apparently at this stage of the game is no requirement to remove all of that soil. One of the problems that I foresee with this is all that concrete that is still on the site. And a developer or if somebody was to buy that property and want to subdivide it, I think that they would perhaps have a difficult time selling that with all that concrete there when you're not allowed to dig. So I think that's one issue that should be considered. So what we're looking at is we still don't know the cost to transport it. We don't know what it's gonna cost to rubbleize it. And there's no clarity on the amount of fill that will be required to fill what is taken out in the form of contaminated soils. Now, obviously, we spent an hour with her, Andrea, and on a conference call were two members of Barton and Long Judas that answered a lot of our questions. You know, were very informative. I don't think that anything, at least as I recall, amounted to, you know, bad things that they reported on or unknown things. I think the unknowns I've identified. I think that we know what they have to do and what their aim is. What they're looking at for that second property, as I said, was a 2021 estimate of $400,000 in order to get that certificate certificate of completion, which would allow them to dispose of the property. So, you know, the rest of the people that were on or at that conference with Andrea, I certainly give them the opportunity to speak and share that with you. I was hoping to get this out a little quicker, but it took more time to review apparently by the engineering firm than we expected. And I just got this back on Friday, I believe it was. So what I suggest, what I would like to see, what I would like to have you do is to take this home with you or before next meeting, take a look at it. And perhaps then that might cause some discussion to be had about, you know, the willingness of the county to, you know, fund a portion of what they're looking to do. You know, as I said, I'm sorry that you're just getting this today, but I just got it over the weekend. So that's where we are with that. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Mr. Corsack.
Thank you. Some of it I recall and some of it I don't. That's all right. We'll get it clarified. One of the reasons right off the bat, what is the purpose of cleaning up Shade Roller? As you can see from the photos, Diamond is on the other side. That's the one that's ready for development now. On the downriver side is the Richardson properties, which used to be the Bass property, which consisted of about, I think they said 3 acres or 4 acres or something like that. And he's ready to develop. The issue is having a contaminated site in between two developments. That's why they want to remedy. The cost of the bids came in under bid. The 2021, it looked like it was going to be 400,000. Now to date, it's around 360 with these expenses. The part Joe mentioned about the concrete, the rubblization, they weren't talking about trucking that off. They were talking about breaking that up and using it as fill. And I don't recall the metals being infiltrated into the concrete, and I'll confirm that, but I don't remember that either. And another option is to leave it as a green area, a buffer between the two, and just have a beautiful green area. The property, I think we all agree, is some of the most pristine riverfront left in the St. Lawrence, undeveloped, ready to go on two sides. And I think tying this together would be beneficial for the county, the school district, the city, everybody will benefit in the long term. The rubblization, the last estimate they had was right around 180,000 to rubblize and use for fill into the low spots. So based on these bids, I'm going to assume it's probably somewhere around there. I think what they're looking for is some sort of commitment. I believe the PCBs also, they mentioned going to Michigan. This is part of that, I believe. If that's the way I recall it, I'll leave it to the others to see how they remember. But I guess what they're looking for is some sort of commitment. I think the total ballpark 600 grand, half of it's 300 grand. I'm interested in going halfway wherever the funds come from, just to help everybody out. But you know, there's 15 members here, so I understand that. But I will confirm the PCBs in the concrete. And I will confirm that that concrete's not being shipped out. I'll make sure of that when I talk.
It's heavy metals too in the concrete.
I remember she said they drilled underneath because we had a concern about the dirt underneath and they said it was clear underneath. So I'll leave it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we had an extensive conversation about the concrete abutments. And my recollection was that the engineers from Martin Judas said they had drilled into those and that they were very confident that there was not PCB in those. And that's why they were saying their recommendation was to rubbleize them so they could be used as fill in the low areas, not to truck them out. But Andrea Smith said she would be happy to address the body if we needed further clarification, or we can have Dave check with her. But that was my recollection of the conversation. I think it's important to note that over the past several years, the city has put something on the order of $1.7 million into cleaning up this property. Back when Dave first brought up the idea of this county participating in trying to get this project speeded up and to occur, the issue was raised, well, we've got to make sure that the city of Ogdensburg has some skin in the game. I think $1.7 million is a lot of skin. If we were to appropriate $300,000 to this project, it would give the city the money it needs to do the rubblization, which they did not go to bid for because they don't have the money to do it. And I think, it's extremely important at this particular time that we encourage the city to get this property cleaned up, under development, and back on the tax roll so that the Diamond property and surrounding properties can also move forward as well. And, at 1,000 to 1,500, I don't know, Bill knows more than I do about property values on the river. But having property on the river that has access to water, sewer, roads, electricity, and everything else, are usually somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000, $1,500 a foot. So getting another 1,000 feet of waterfront back into development will provide long-term benefits to the entire county. And, we would, I think some of the other folks that were there, I'd be interested in hearing their thoughts as well. We were very pleased with the Andrea's presentation, and the folks from Bartlett Judas answered a lot of the questions about the extensive environmental studies that we've done. And it is not it is a common practice on a lot of these former industrial properties to have rules that say, you can't have single family homes on the property because they don't want, kids eating the dirt.
But, you can have townhouse development, you can have commercial development, you can have,
That's one yes and no.
multifamily use of the property. And this will be a great opportunity to expand our tax base, promote economic development, and spur new jobs and new growth in St. Lawrence County. So
Bill or Sheridan or Mr. Bay.
I think we should do anything we can to help them. We've got a big investment in it. It's the most valuable property probably in St. Lawrence County and waterfront property. If anybody's been on St. Lawrence, lived on it for any good time, you can go almost anywhere. You head into the Great Lakes if you want to go.
Staggered, yeah, hand up.
I have a question, if I may. If we were to do this, do they have prospective investors or people that are interested in, is it going to be just cleaned up, or are there people that it's,
but they can't market it until it's cleaned up.
okay,
I mean, you as a potential developer have no interest in bidding on polluted properties.
you're right.
So this has to happen before they can seek any kind of development, opportunities.
Do they have a plan?
I'm not.
No, they don't,
You guys can answer that.
they don't,
I'm just trying to.
I'm not.
the plan is to clean the place up. Then they want to get rid of it to a developer. Then it's up to the developer to, map out and come up with a plan on what they want to do to, much like what they've done with Diamond National. They partnered with a gentleman that I guess was formerly from Ogdenburg, was he not?
Yeah.
And works for a company now and they've shown interest in developing that property. But it would be developed, of course, based upon the zoning laws, the construction, requirements, and how much of that property is or is not usable.
Thank you.
So we're looking for a grant. I don't know.
Partnership. It sounded like a partnership. Yeah,
Does that mean we would get money back?
yeah, kind of, they'd be interested in something like that. And also, it behooves us all if that property's back on the tax, as Dan said, it just behooves everyone. They're close, they just gotta get across the line.
Or we could direct the IDA to use some of the ARPA money.
It's coming out of broadband.
We'll put a tower up on there.
Anyone else want to add to the discussion or have any questions? We just got the materials in both of their emails still sent out. I did not see it. And there's something in your mailbox. Documents, so our first shot at it. This is different in that much of the cleanups that we've done in the past have been on foreclosed properties.
This is foreclosed property. The city of Ogdensburg owns that property, took ownership to it back in 2007.
Anyone else? So come prepared.
Yep.
Anybody, legislators can email the four representatives, Mr. Lightfoot, Mr. Fay, Woodside, Mr. Grady, doesn't matter.
And the other part of it, and either Jim or Dave mentioned that Andrea said that she's more than willing to come over here and answer any questions.
Okay.
So if that's the will of the board, we can see that gets done.
Can be invited to the board meeting presentation. Stacked.
We
Can't
have
do it at
a
board meeting.
ceremony
Okay,
as well.
all right. And then services. Communication.
Thank you, Chairman. I just think that, you look at Clayton. Clayton was pretty much the same as waterfront in Ogdenburg. Now they've got a five-star hotel. I think, we've got the opportunity with the same river in Ogdensburg as we do in Clayton and Alex Bay. Anything we can do to help. I think this is a benefit.
So, I bring Andrea Smith in for services or operations.
Sooner the better.
They're
Yeah, I think they
gonna
were-
look at
Yeah.
that. Partnership sounds more interesting than a grant because the constituents that we represent are not in the city of Oxford. We guys do a hell of a job representing the city. So, let's see. Good. All right, so the next up is wastewater surveillance and data analysis discussion with Joel and Mike. Welcome home.
Thank you. It's good to be back, although it was good to be away. So I'm going to try to answer some of the questions that you guys had on wastewater. As Dr. Williams presented multiple times over the last couple of years, wastewater has been used in a variety of different areas to start to monitor the levels of COVID in a community. So wastewater data can show the changes in the disease trends 4 to 6 days before the changes are seen in clinical cases. And a single wastewater sample can capture thousands of people versus just one person. It also helps as more people are shifting to home tests and not reporting them to give us a more accurate idea of what is actually going on in our communities. So with that, we can help to tell when something, a variant has peaked, what variant it is, whereas our testing right now doesn't tell us what variant we have. And it can serve as a warning system when we get into a lull to see if we have a spike coming again. It also doesn't play into socioeconomic factors. So everybody goes to the bathroom, everybody's poop is involved in it. So it doesn't matter if you have money not for testing or not, get tested or not, we'll be able to see as a community where we are with all of that. The other thing with the wastewater is that wastewater has been used to monitor different diseases in the past. So like polio, and it's been more recently used to monitor drug uses, and New York State is starting a drug use pilot that I am hoping to be able to talk to the project manager to see if we can get our county included, which we're not currently included, partially because we don't have any places set up to do it. And so the drug use pilot is a 3-month study to understand with the specificity, the sensitivity, and the logistics before they hopefully roll that out to 100 different sites in the state. And we would really, especially with our drug use in our county, like to be included in one of those 100 sites for that. As for how the data would be used, we just started before I went on vacation, got enough data points to make our data useful. But I spoke with Jefferson County, who has been using this for the last 2 years. They give their reports to their county administrator, board of legislators, Fort Drum, and the hospital CEO to help make determinations about county policies, staffing needs, and as an extra tool along with the case count. So you can see the hospital has used it to see if they need to increase staffing, if they should be expecting a spike again, which we are currently seeing an increase in our hospitalizations. So as to the cost, if we were to, I'll go to the sites first. So we are looking in consultation with New York State to add in our county twice a week testing at the village of Potsdam, the village of Canton, the city of Ogdensburg, and the village of Gouverneur, with a second site at second testing sample at the village of Messina. New York State already pays for one sample from Messina that the report should be in your Google Drive for all of you to review every week. So to do that twice a week sampling at the 4 sites and then once a week at Messina for 46 weeks, which would take us from approximately May 9th through the end of the grant funding, which would be March 31st, would be $93,150. The colleges are not included in the villages as they have their own wastewater disposal. If I'm not sure if you remember, but back in the fall of 2020, Clarkson University had conducted their own wastewater surveillance for Clarkson, St. Lawrence University, and SUNY Canton. The colleges were able to use the wastewater to put out warnings and alerts for the dorms that were alerting to higher detections of wastewaters in those specific dorm areas for the campuses. The professor that ran that program has been on sabbatical for this year. And I don't know if they're looking to pick it up again. I believe they are. Does that answer, and quickly, briefly, a lot of the questions that you guys had from last week?
I believe so. Anyone have any further questions? Mr. Denisha?
Elaine, same question I had last week. We were talking about testing Canton, Potsdam, Augsburg, Governor, and Messina, I believe you said.
Yes.
There are a number of small communities throughout the county that have municipal sewage systems. What are we going to do about them? Or are we going to do nothing?
So I understand that there are a number. Part of this is we only have funding. So we were awarded of funding to do additional grant funding for testing and vaccination efforts or mask enforcement. So we are using them for vaccination and testing efforts. In consultation with the state, the sites were picked due to the population size. And I do have a list of all of the available watersheds or the wastewater treatment facilities. There's 22 in our county that we could potentially choose from. When you drop below the Village of Governor serves approximately 4,705 people. The next one is Norfolk with 1,736. So when you get down to Hubleton, Hubleton serves 845. DeKalb serves 210 and Herman serves 337. So we are looking to, one, help position ourselves in a way that our data will feed into the New York State wastewater surveillance system that has been established. And that will in turn feed into the national wastewater surveillance system that was established in September-ish of 2020. I don't know the exact month. Wastewater surveillance has been around for a while, but it's new to be used for our country as a national level or even a statewide level. So we're looking to pick up sites that would potentially be eligible for continued funding after COVID.
Mr. Smithers?
Yeah. Initially, we were talking about using this surveillance for COVID detection. You mentioned drug usage also. Could you be a little more specific about what you mean by that?
So we are using COVID funding for this because that's what we have the testing for, and we would be monitoring COVID levels. A sample can also be used to monitor other public health issues. One is drug use, illicit drug use. And I am hoping to try to this week, I'm hoping to have a meeting with the project manager to see if we're able to get the sites in our county to see if we can get one of our sites included in a drug use pilot that the state is doing to see where our levels are. We all know we do have a drug use project. So I'm hoping to use the COVID funding to set us up for future uses that including drug use monitoring in our county. So you can measure the different levels of say, methamphetamine, heroin, ecstasy. There's 4 main ones. I forget the 4th, that are used really for drug use monitoring to see what your levels of use are in a community.
Thank you, Jolene. I think you've answered most of our questions. Welcome home again. Okay,
Thank you.
All right, executive session, do we have the? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You have your hand up?
No, she was first.
I already know the high levels you're gonna be.
I was just going to, last week I was on the agenda for family court committee update, and I wasn't here, I don't know if you wanted me to provide that tonight.
Sure, go ahead.
So the family court committee, which consists of myself, legislators Fiaco, Smithers, and Perkins, and we've Chairman Sheridan has also sat in with us. We've been meeting since December. We started formally having meetings to look at the family court caseload. It was brought to our attention from 2016, actually, let me pull my statistics over here. From 2016 to 2020, there was a decrease in the number of cases that we saw in St. Lawrence County. Out of the 11 counties that are part of the 4th Judicial District, St. Lawrence County has always been the highest caseload for one family court judge among those 11 counties. So it became a concern to us, and we wanted to look into it. We had some elected officials that were willing to carry or sponsor a bill for a second family court judge if the need arose. So we've been looking at the statistics and gathering them for us. We've looked at 2016 through 2020, and there was a decrease. Unfortunately, starting in 2020 to 22, there has been an increase again. So we've looked at some of the options and why our caseload is so high. And I'm sure that Steve can provide some great statistics and anecdotal evidence, but pretty much we have about 19 attorneys that handle our court cases in St. Lawrence County, and most of those attorneys are not even practicing in St. Lawrence County. They come and they make appearances here to help expedite our family court cases. Each case may have up to dozens of appearances that go along with it, and each is assigned its own docket number. So when we look at, for example, right now, the projection for 2022 is that we'll have 4,561 cases based on the first 2 terms, which is the first 8 weeks of 2022. There may be dozens of cases that go along, or dozens of appearances that go along with one case in there. So when we look at the numbers, that might not be 4,000 cases, may not be 4,000 individuals. It may be closer to 1,000 individuals, for example. So it's kind of hard to get a measure on that. But what we're finding is since Judge Morris, we were kind of looking from the transition to Judge Morris, from Judge Morris to Judge Moses, just to see if there was an uptick along with the courts opening back up in processing cases, and the cases are moving along a little bit quicker than they were. So that's a positive. But one of the biggest things is if we had our elected officials sponsor a bill that would give us a second family court judge, theoretically, that'd be great. We'd get the cases done 2 times as fast and wrapped up, and people would get some resolution. However, that's not necessarily the case, because we are having a hard time getting attorneys that to appear. Oftentimes we're pushing back court dates for appearances. So having 2 family court judges, that there's some cost and space that would be associated with that, and not necessarily expedite the process for families. So we are going to continue to meet and monitor the statistics as the year progresses. But at this time, our recommendation as a committee is that we don't move forward with sponsoring legislation for a second family court judge, just because we would be bound to that forever for a long period of time, and it doesn't necessarily give us the results that we're looking for. We do have still some concerns about some cases that move forward that don't move through as quickly as we'd like, and we're going to continue to meet and do some research on that. And that's kind of just to bring you up to speed. We've been meeting since December. We met December, January, and then kind of postponed to wait for the first 2 terms to roll in so we could have some updated statistics with our new family court judge in place. And I don't know if any of the other legislators that sit on the committee would like to add anything to that. It's been great working. We've been really educated about the family court process and system that we weren't familiar with. And I know that it can be very frustrating to families. But, you know, the courts were closed and they're starting to move forward, and hopefully people will start to see their cases move forward as well. And we will continue to monitor it and be ready to react and continue to research as needed. I don't know if any of you would like to add anything to that.
You summarized it very well. The space is definitely a problem, but even if we had it, you mentioned the attorneys. So there's a need there for those that, yeah, we don't have.
And I would just like to add, I really appreciate Senator Ritchie and Assemblyman Smallin for being willing to carry a bill on behalf of St. Lawrence County, if that was the wish of this board and the committee. So I do want to thank them for their support.
Thank you. I had a question about the impediment to getting attorneys. Is this how they're reimbursed, or is it just not an interest in that type of work? Can anyone address that?
If I could defer to Steve, he probably collectively knows the response to that much better than we do.
It's actually a number of different issues that are sort of colluding to deny us attorneys in the year. One is really a product of our demographics. 13 years ago, when I came back, right, practice outside of the area, we looked at a composite photo of the St. Lawrence County Bar Association. The St. Lawrence County Bar Association composite photo actually displayed a very interesting feature, which I suspect you would find if you took a cross section pretty much in. And that was that more than half of the individuals listed on that composite photo were within 10 years of retirement. I knew 13 years ago that we were going to start running into a situation where there were going to be a lot of attorneys handling a lot of matters that were going to be easing out of the system. Well, here we are 10 to 13 years later from that time. And what I had anticipated was going to forever. Those people are leaving practice. And those were people who really did a lot on the baby boomer attorney. Were very busy, very active, carrying huge loads, and they had no one. And in their absence, you haven't seen a number of individuals from the legal profession enter to fill that. You're just finding that those who are left around here are picking up more and more and more work, which is really interesting. Another somewhat difficult scenario was created by the format of family practice. Family practice is obviously very difficult. Take a look at the attorney statistics. The number one alleged malpractice area is within the field of divorce and family law. Not necessarily because malpractice is actually being committed, but because it's so possible at times. Even though it falls within the realm of civil practice, we routinely joke in the attorney waiting room and with other attorneys that at times there is nothing civil about it. It's a very, very difficult, very hostile field. It doesn't necessarily attract a lot of people. Add to that a perception amongst the local bar that family court administration not necessarily is hospitable to attorney practice. And that drove a lot of our local practicing out of the family court realm and towards other areas. Add to that the fact that the $75 an hour for the higher end cases, $60 for the lower end cases, hasn't changed in a couple of decades. And attorneys actually bill at a rate of about $25. And you can see that confluence of factors is now having a significant impact on our ability to retain, attract, and motivate individuals to take these types of cases. And I just tossed out 4 factors off the top of my head. I'm sure if I sat here and thought about it, a little bit more, probably not.
Thank you.
That's not very good. Oh, Mr. Forsythe.
Yeah, I just wanna, I've heard Jolene talk on COVID. We've been listening to COVID for 2 years, and until the passing of my dad, I still hadn't heard that there's a FEMA grant available for anyone that passes from COVID. And COVID is on the death certificate, of up to $9,000 for funeral costs. So I was unaware of it. One of the girls that came to the funeral with my sister told me about it, and sure enough, it is there. So if you run into anyone, you know, good, bad things comes good, so.
Okay, you do, Ms. Perkins.
Still on new business?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I touched on this a couple of weeks ago. I was approached by Darren Richards, who's the head of DPW in Colton, which also incorporates the wastewater treatment plant. Twofold he called me for. One is an issue of the cost, rising cost. Basically, it's the transportation. The end product of the wastewater treatment plant is a liquefied sludge. It gets hauled either to Watertown or Rodman. It has to be 20% solid, so there's a lot of liquid that gets dumped in there. And then it gets leached out, and then it has to get taken to Watertown or another place to be liquefied, I guess you'd call it. So they went from, in 10 years, from $10,000 to $31,000 a year just in this. They're not the only one. There's approximately 23 other municipalities that have wastewater treatment plants, so it would affect, I think, every legislator's township or so. He had an idea of how to a potential fix to this. So we got together with Kerry Tuttle from Dank, because they work with all the wastewater treatment plants around. Thought it was a good idea herself. We met with planning last week, Mr. Denisha. And we'd like to have a presentation here on the operations meeting next month, if possible, on this, to talk about it. They can talk about the ins and outs of it way more than I can, but there's a huge cost there. But he's potentially looking at this system where we would centralize a location for other municipalities to come to dump their liquefied sludge. Each municipality has a different process of how much sludge or liquefied sludge they have. So dewatering process, I guess you call it. But it would potentially dump into this one central location and go through that and go through an air drying system at the end, where you have a solid, which is a Class A fertilizer, which can be sold as an end product, plus saving costs for all the municipalities coming locally to dump their liquid sludge. It's a huge cost, but I think it's a great idea. The county would need to be the lead agency. There's a lot of grants out there for this. But first off, we need to do a feasibility study, which costs about 20 grand if we did it through Dan. So I'd like them to come and do a presentation if the board wills it, so they can get the details out. And if there's any questions, you could certainly ask them. You can get down into the dirty grind. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Perkins invited me to attend the meeting. And I've never heard of the concept before. I think I'm just very excited about it. Because not only does it, does the sludge, it goes to the landfill. And we know the landfill, there's a finite amount of space in the landfill. So we could eliminate filling up the landfill, we could eliminate the need to truck, the expense associated with trucking it. and we can have an end product that has some value to it. So I think there's a lot of, more positives to this than there are downsides. And I think it'd be, I agree with Mr. Perkins, it would be, I think it'd be really interesting to have a presentation.
In the town of Lisbon, there's a big biodigester going in. Is there any reason they can't use that? Up with one of these farmers that had, or just have it separated? I don't know.
Well, that's not my field. I'm not sure what biodigester can take. I think that's more solid, but I'm not sure. But there's a lot of liquid in here. I mean, there's 80% or more liquid that has, when they're done, there's some places where the water, it goes right out into the rivers. It's that clean, or they fertilize or sprinkle golf courses, things like that. I mean, but as far as that, you would have to ask the professionals.
It would seem if it was that lucrative at private companies that would be in. I still believe, well, I think you probably know, I asked another individual, Pasan is still taking their sludge to Avon Parks. You know that, Margaret, or now?
I'm not familiar with that.
So it's the Gilbert Farm.
I don't know if that's still happening. They had some issues.
So I came to the MAP meeting after our first discussion, and this gentleman that was there said that they were still doing it. So what?
I know Colton used to, but they can't take it there anymore.
They can't, because of metals?
I'm not totally sure on it. Something about the injection system, the way they do it, you can't do it in the winter. You can only do it in the summer, spring, summer, fall.
So what Potsdam used to do is they stored it, and that's at Avon Farms, the 1,200 cal facility. And then what Potsdam did was they had this big tanker that would inject it directly in the soil. So the farmer benefited because you're actually spreading farmers' cow generated manure along with people's, and so it's a great system. So I wondered if it was heavy metals that was a problem, but they would apply it in the spring. You can't do it in the winter, it becomes frozen.
And I don't think that the few farms that we have could take all the municipalities' waste that we do have. That's quite a few. I know there's at least 23 wastewater facilities in the county. Maybe one or two more.
So in my conversation with the town of Madrid, they had not, Spirit of the New System had not ever had to remove any sludge, but they're actually checking into it. They think this year to find the accumulation, they may have to. So
Every few years, I think you have to clean them out, sort of like you do your septic.
So we do have a need for executive session.
Sir, I wanted to ask if our treasurer and controller to join. That's no objection to that. We have reason for negotiation, litigation, personnel. To discuss the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Okay.
The motion to.
Oh,
Oh,
Second.
all right.
can we have a presentation? at
Yeah,
the
yeah.
operation?
Everybody's in.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be back. Thank you.
And,
So is there a move, going executive by?